Anyway, I want to talk just a moment about batteries, because batteries are really important. Speaking of choosing a subject, when I chose the subject last time or the time before that about overdrives, oh my gosh, I got so many emails about overdrives. I got more of them today. And they can't all be acting up at the same time. So anyway, about batteries. Um, you want to choose the battery that fits your vehicle. So if you want to have twin 6 volts in your MGA or your early MGB, the standard number is 17HF kilo. Oh my gosh, Fox. So 17HF, but don't do it. Those batteries are still made with the 1955 technology. They last for a year or two and then they fail. And what's the point? So on the MGA and the early MGBs, get rid of the twin 6 volts and instead install a single group 26 on the passenger side, assuming left-hand drive, but the right-hand side of the car. And your positive cable's right there. You can get rid of that long negative cable that goes, or the intermediate cable that goes from one battery to the other, and then move the ground cable over to the right-hand side of the car. Now, if you're Mr. Original and you've been running with positive earth all these years, because that's what God intended the car should be, once you switch, once you switch to a single 12 volt, you've already violated all these rules. So this is your opportunity to switch it over to negative ground and just be modern. 74.5 MGB through the end of the end of production on MGBs. That's a group 24, great big battery. Some of these now are supplied with handles. Oh my gosh, you can pick them up. I bought a group 24 handle. It's like, oh, I hope they paid that guy $1 million. Like maybe he's the son of the guy that put the timing marks from 6 o'clock up to 11 o'clock on the MGBs, so you don't have to crawl on your belly to time them. And the midgets take a group 45. So you can use that group 45 from the midget on a T-type, on a TC, TD, TF, or you can also use that group 24 on the TD-TF. I mean, it's a gargantuan battery. You can almost drive home on a starter motor. There's so much energy in those batteries. And the batteries are differentiated one from another by the length of their warranty. It's hard to get the technical data off the side, but if you get a battery that's guaranteed for 36 months, or you're looking at one that's guaranteed for 72 months, it means that the reserve capacity, the amount of energy that you can store inside the battery, is probably about twice as much in that second battery, the one with the longer warranty period on it. Batteries hold about 80 amp hours of electricity, about 80. That's what most of ours hold. And that means that it'll deliver 1 amp for 80 hours, or it'll deliver 80 amps for 1 hour. It only really has to deliver about 150 amps for as long as it takes your car to start, which if it's well tuned isn't very long at all, or if it's not, or if it's heated and you're trying to get the thing to start because the gasoline's boiling, you can run the starter motor so frequent and so much that it exceeds its duty cycle, and even the starter motor. I'm going to hit mute all, just because I don't like you, but there we go. So anyway, batteries should be tied to the vehicle. They shouldn't be slipping around. When they go back in the battery compartment in an MGA or MGB, they're just a terror to work on. Although if you flip the soft top forward, all the way forward, out of the way, then you can kick the seat forward. You can get down and lean over the back of the car. Of course, you can't do that on a GT. Those are horrible. To put the battery in or out, you can just use 2 pairs of vice grips, put one in each post. Don't touch them together. Put one on each post and just drop it into place. Once it's into place, though, you want to tie it down. Tie it down with something. I've seen bungee cords. I've seen pieces of plywood jammed in the side. You know, you can get threaded rods and a crossbar and tighten it up and just grease everything. If the battery's out of the battery compartment, wash it down with soda, baking soda out of your kitchen in water, wait for it to dry, blow it off, scrub it off as best you can. Just gunk it up with some sort of undercoating, some kind of tarry, awful, yucky stuff, and wait for that to dry a little bit. When you're putting that group 26 into the early MGBs or the MGAs, you got to cut a piece of plywood 7 1/4 by 7 1/4 inches, about that thick, 1/2 an inch, 3/4 of an inch thick, so it lifts the battery up off the rear bar of the battery holder, if it's still even there. Otherwise, it'll end up slicing a hole in the bottom of the battery. You get that battery in there tight. The battery wants to be clean. A dirty battery discharges itself. Batteries discharge themselves anyway, but if it's dirty on top, the leak across from one post to the other is going to be worse. The post should be brilliantly clean, wire brush. The battery clamp should be new. Now, if you're Mr. Original and you've got to use the helmet clamps, then you have no option but usually to observe battery polarity and keep the early ones positive earth. If you must use those, then you got to drill the center of the post. You got to be real careful drilling the lead. It'll slow down that drill, and your drill will snap it right off. So you can only drill about 1/16 of an inch at a time. Drill down and pull it out, and get rid of the lead, and drill it down again and throw it out, and drill it down again, and just careful. And then you can put a screw in there, which should be, on the earlier cars, if you're Mr. Original, a slotted screw, or the later cars, a Phillips screw. But of course, a little hex on the top is really handy, because then you put a wrench on it, and it's not original. What's the point if you're going through all that with the helmet clamps? You can get replacement helmet clamps. Welch used to have those. They do Jaguar parts out of Ohio, but they come to you and they're bronze. They're still the bronze color, of the casting of the bronze. So now what are you going to do? Now you got to heat them up anyway. When you put the battery cable in, you got to heat them up anyway. Tin the cable and put the cable in, and then put in half a roll of solder to make sure that it's got a good connection there. But then you heat up the whole outside of the clamp and tin that. Now it looks like it's lead. It doesn't look like it's bronze.
John, I got a set for the TD from Rhode Island Wiring, and they were helmets, because I didn't know that helmet was bad. I'm not all that much into originality, but anyway, the helmet ends were already made up to the cable for both the cable that goes from the battery to the starter gizmo, and for the ground braided wire. So you look it up on the web, Rhode Island Wiring. They do pretty good stuff.
Thank you. Rhode Island Wiring. I'd forgotten about them. I usually defer to British Wiring in Philadelphia, but yes, Rhode Island Wiring does wiring looms too, if I'm not mistaken. Their existence had slipped my memory. Thanks, John.
John,
Yes.
when I'm getting the battery out, this may not be correct, but I put a floor jack underneath there with a block of wood, and it fits just underneath the battery, and it could raise it up just a little bit to get your fingers on there to pick it up.
Okay.
Otherwise, I can't get my hands in there anymore.
Yeah, the vice grips.
Yeah.
You got vice grips, right? I mean, you can go get a battery lifting cable and with a little slipping piece of metal on it and push it over the post, lift it up. Vice grips just lift it right up too. So.
It also helps to have two slender daughters that can get in the car to lift it out.
Get underneath to push up on
Push
the
it up and in the car to lift it up. So.
Oh, okay. So what else do I have about just say fully charged? You want to make sure your battery is always fully charged. And one of the newest, greatest inventions that's probably 30 years old by now are these battery tenders. And not something you eat like chicken tenders, but battery tenders that you hook up and you can leave permanently attached to your battery. So when I get my daughter's car, I hardwired it. I hardwired the battery tender into the battery. So, and the plug is right underneath the bonnet. All she's got to do is open up the bonnet and put in a extension cord, and the thing starts charging. It's just hardwired. You don't have to go back to the battery and all that fuss. It's just hooked right to the fuse box, to the brown wires at the fuse box, and that works on anybody's car. So you want to keep it fully charged all the time. The more fully charged it stays over a period of time, the better it is, and the longer it'll last. If you
John,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. How long on a like a normal run, we take your car for a run, how long does it take to fully charge the battery, would you say?
Well, of course, it depends on how depleted the battery is, but if you've got 80 amp hours in the battery, and let's say it's only got 40 amp hours in it left,
Okay.
you got to put 40 more amp hours into it. Now the alternators, the later model 15, 16, 17, 18 ACRs I think they'll charge at 35 amps, but that's pretty heavy duty. So still that's out driving for an hour and you're not fully charged. And I don't think they're going to give you a full charge like that, but you got to drive for a while. Plus, when you're driving, it takes 3 amps to drive the car. And then if you turn on the headlights or the radio or the wipers or the brake lights or the turn signals or the heater blower, all that stuff takes up energy too. Best way is to just, those battery tenders are inexpensive, 30, 40 bucks. Just get it, mount it right inside the car, unless you're Mr. Original. And then of course you got to use the clips, but you don't even have to go to the battery. You can go right to the fuse box. And just put the thing in and leave
Where
it.
in the fuse box would you connect it, John?
On your car, Guido, it's on the very bottom, the bottom fuse, the brown purple fuse. That's what I call it. So that's you've got a 4 fuse block on your car because that's a 70, isn't it?
70, yes.
Yep. So that's the bottom fuse there. On the earlier MGBs with 2 fuses, it's still the brown purple fuse. On TCs, TDs, TFs, it's still basically that same fuse, the horn fuse. Anything that's got a brown wire on it is hot. So
brown purple with the positive, the tender,
correct. The
and
brown wire.
the negative on the tender goes
wherever.
to ground.
Yep, to ground.
Ground. Mhm. All right.
When I was traveling to Atlantic City with my girlfriend Mary, Guido lives 2 miles away from the convention hotel, and he said, "Oh, if you're going to be out, look me up, and we'll see each other." And easy to say and easy to miss somebody, even with as few cars as there were there. But right away we found each other, and he took Mary and myself to this wonderful little restaurant for breakfast with crab boats and shrimp boats and clam boats against the wharf and the dock and against the restaurant. It was really nice. Thanks, Guido. Very kind.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Gilchrist. It was called Gilchrist.
Gilchrist.
Yeah.
John,
Yes.
what about some of the newer type batteries, AGM batteries like Optima versus the older lead acid? Any thoughts on that?
No, I don't know anything about them. I just really don't. The first one were gel batteries, and people saying, well, you can put them on their side and they won't leak. It's like, well, yeah, but when's your battery on its side anyway? So I don't know. I can't believe that they can pack more energy into the same volume using basically a lead acid. I mean, once you go into lithium ion, all of a sudden the price just skyrockets. Like a modern electric car. But I don't know anything about those.
John,
Yes.
This is Les Bengtson, and I sent you a chat mail about that. I've been using Optima batteries for over 15 years in rubber bumper MGs and various other classic automobiles. They are the only battery I've found that will live out their warranty life here in Arizona with our hot summers. The Optima is just a wonderful battery. I use the red top. It's a little bit shorter than the Group 24 battery. You've got to do a custom tie down for it, but it is a magnificent battery, and my current one is 10 years old. Recommend them most highly.
Okay, so Eric, that's the word from Phoenix, Arizona. What else do I want to say? Oh, maybe I didn't say this. If you have to top off the battery, always make sure that, if the caps do come off, that you use distilled water, but now it's called deionized water, not just mineral water that you buy at the store that somebody drew out of their tap in your adjoining city and selling it to you at a premium, but actually one without any. What can it have in an iron? It can't have any iron in it. That's the death knell for the battery. Is when you put iron in there, it screws up the chemical reaction between the sulfuric acid and the lead plates. So just keep it charged. Batteries are the most oversold part of the car. If you take your battery, which you have dutifully discharged, you run it down to zip, okay? It'll barely even light up a test light. You take it into a store, and you have them check it. The needle says bad. Doesn't say empty. The battery's just empty. Just got to fill it back up with electricity. But their needle says bad. Batteries are sold so frequently. It's craziness. And if you take care of your battery, it'll work out great. I just said I was working on my landlord's car, his MGA, and he hadn't run it for 2 years, and the battery's just flat dead. And he texted me yesterday, I think, and said, "Oh, I got a new battery coming on Monday." And I texted him right back. He said, "Tony, don't. I already put it on charge at 40 amps that was the rating on the charger, but the meter on the charger never got above about 5 amps." And I just let it sit there for a couple hours, I think maybe on Friday. And then I left it on the 2 amp charge overnight. And when I came back on Saturday to check it, I put my grippers on it and loaded it at like 150 amps and watched the voltage. And it stayed above 10 volts. So, hey, it's a great battery. It was dead. I mean, it was dead. He was going to buy another one. I said, save your money. Buy your wife some flowers. It's you don't need a new battery. You just need to take care of it. So,
Hey, John,
yes.
John, Rui here from Toronto, Canada. You mentioned Battery Tender, and that's actually a name brand. And I think you're talking like a float charger, right?
Sure. I didn't know. I apparently I said Kleenex when I meant tissue.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah,
So-
I was sort of surprised because when I went into Napa to buy that one, it wasn't called a Battery Tender. It was a battery something else. And I thought, why don't they just call it a Battery Tender? I guess because someone owns the name. Okay.
Yeah, Battery Tender is like their brand is like a green lettering or whatever, green plaque on the devices, and they sell different models of these types of float chargers or automatic chargers where they turn on and off to maintain the battery fully charged but not to overcharge them, and you can spend anywhere from like $30 to over $100 to get one. And the lower cost ones tend to have a very low amp rating on them, and I suspect that with the lower amp ratings that they won't actually recharge a battery. Like if you run a battery down to 0, I have a feeling one of those with the really low amp ratings might not recharge the battery. It'll maintain the battery if it's fully charged already, but I don't think it'll.
Or it might take a week.
And on those, because I have a Battery Tender, and if the battery's fully dead, it will sense that and it will not charge. But if you put the clips on it and then act like you're gonna jump it from another battery and you just touch it there, it'll get the battery tender going. And they're very slow because they're low amperage. But you leave it on there for a day or two and it'll fully charge it. But if the battery's fully dead, you gotta kind of jump it to get it going because the circuitry thinks, nah, you don't have it hooked up right, so I'm not going to charge. Because they also have polarity guards built into them. If you hook them up backwards, it won't blow up or anything. You'll get a flashing red light to tell you, hey, you didn't do it right. And so it senses that there's nothing there and it thinks you've hooked it up wrong. So if you touch it to a battery off of your real car or something, it'll get it going and then it'll fully charge it. They're just slow.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had one which is kind of like a Canadian brand one from Canadian Tire. I've got it right here. And the reason why it's not hooked up to my car is because I've had this thing for, I don't know, well over 10 years. And every winter I just hook it up to the car and leave it in the garage in the Canadian winter. And I had a battery last 8 years on me. So I did pretty well with this thing. Last year, I hooked it up on a new battery, which I bought in 2019, and it has a couple of indicator lights on it, but I left it hidden. So whenever I went into the garage, I couldn't see this. Turns out this fried on me this past winter. When I went to try my car this spring, the battery's completely dead. So I recharged it, and of course it's able to restart the car. But I think when you drain a lead acid battery right down to zero or to a very low amount, that you are damaging the battery by doing that, right?
Don't know.
I think that's probably correct. I mean, I don't know that you're damaging it where it won't work at all, but I think you definitely shorten the life of it or how much charge it'll hold.
There is a firm in Ohio that makes batteries, and they've got a Lucas case. You want a battery that says Lucas on the side? Tar top battery, an old fashioned 1950 tar top battery. There it is. And they'll send it to you dry. And then you got to go buy the sulfuric acid and put the acid in it. And as soon as the acid goes in at 1250, 1275, specific gravity, it's all but fully charged. So yeah, it may not be good to let a battery go all the way down to zero, but you can bring them back up. You can also bring them, extra information here. You can, I've said this before here, you can charge the battery up backwards. If you go flat dead and hook the charger up this way or this way, battery doesn't know, it'll charge up backwards. So the positive post is actually negative. I mean, how does it know? It doesn't work as well. There's a difference in the way the plates are constructed. Some of the plates are pretty solid. The other ones are more of a fabric. I've had customers charge them up backwards. Oh, there's a lot to say about batteries. When you go to Napa and buy that ground strap that goes between, or Canadian Tire, and go between the battery and ground, for Christ's sakes, get a black cable, assuming it's negative earth. If you ask for a cable that's this long, what are they going to sell you? They're going to sell you a red cable. And you go, I'll just put that on. And then your brother-in-law borrows the car, leaves the lights on, finally finds the battery after he's called you 3 times. Gets the battery thing open, there's a red cable and a black cable. Well, duh, positive to red, negative to black. And if it's got an alternator, he lets the smoke out. So yeah, just always have mark the battery so that there's no question about which post is which.
Getting from camp and then getting her.
John, you can also get battery cables of different lengths and different sizes.
They've just got a lot going on.
As
So
far as the
I don't
gauges
know
of wire from
about-
eBay. You can get them from eBay. I bought several.
Okay.
Okay.
But one other item is when you're shopping for a battery, what I found, at least shopping at Walmart or someplace like that when you're looking for the battery and you find battery 26 or 24 or whatever, that they also have 26R. If they have an R after it, it reverses the post, which may fit your car better and make you not have to do weird things with your cables.
That's especially true on T-types and midgets. Because if you got the posts near the back of the battery, near the firewall, if they don't touch the car and cause a problem that way, all that corrosion, I don't know what my daughter, who's got a doctorate in chemistry, was just here, and I said, I don't know, I call it anhydrous acid. I don't know what it is. It's that growth that you get on the positive post, but that'll creep over and touch the ground and begin shorting out. So it causes lots of corrosion and damage to the bodywork of the car.
Hey, John, when you have the charging of the batteries there, I agree that I always found out that a trickle charge is the best way to charge a battery, because I've had experience where a friend of mine, he did a fast charge of the battery, and we went and he put it in the car. We were ready to hook the sucker up, and I was going, this battery feels a little bit warm. And the minute we touched the post on there, a spark went and that battery blew up right up on us. And I was going, how fast did you charge this sucker? And he charged it within an hour, and it was dead to an hour, and he put a 25 amp charger on it. So I believe that if there's a dead battery, put a small trickle charge, have patience, and let it just sit and charge overnight, and it's a much safer way.
That's why you don't put an MGB battery in the trunk, in the boot, because it's trapped. And anytime you charge the battery, look at the chemical equation. You've got an H with an arrow going up. It releases hydrogen gas when you're charging it. So, and that carries some fluid away and all that kind of stuff. So you want to have that battery in an area that's well ventilated. I had a battery blow up on me once. I was charging it violently. We're trying to start an engine on the floor. There's no junk battery, chargers on it. It's frothing. The battery's frothing. And I got jumper cables, everything wrong here. This is a long time ago. And I was suddenly disoriented, and I had no idea what had happened until I looked down at the battery, and the whole top of the battery was gone. It looked like one of those cutaways that you'd see under plexiglass at the airport or something, of some piece of equipment or something like a battery. Anyway, and then I realized I was wet, so that's all the acid. So I went up and washed my hands and my face, and the next day my hat just disintegrated. But it's not a question of whether people are killed or injured or killed by exploding batteries every year. It's how many. So it's like postmen. It's not a question of whether postmen die from being attacked by dogs. It's just on their delivery routes. It's just a question of how many a year. So same thing with the battery. So you are absolutely correct. Charge the battery slowly, and never ever make both the connections. If you're charging it, don't make both the connections at the battery. Don't do it. Have one at the battery and one on the door striker at a distance. Hook it up at a distance, because when you disconnect the charger, you've got hydrogen gas around there. That's what the Hindenburg was filled with. So it will burn up. It will let loose all of a sudden. So you guys are lucky that you didn't have a worse problem with that, Peter. So
Yeah, I know. You're saying about the hat. I was wearing like a double knit shorts at the time. We were outside. Yeah, I said my shorts just started coming off right outside. And everything. I had to go over and get a new pair of pants. I had to run inside. I was getting naked with the involuntary.
So batteries are bombs. They're really, really dangerous. In the great scope of things, they're really, really safe, because hardly anyone is injured. Hardly anyone. Just like gasoline. Can you imagine anything? people are going to look back at us 100 years from now going, can you believe they went to these places and put this volatile fuel into the tank and all the gases were spilled out in the atmosphere? And you hardly ever read about a fire at a gas station. I mean, there are some, you see them on YouTube if you're looking for them, but it doesn't happen much. Batteries are the same way. There's a lot of energy inside that battery. Oh, how many BTUs? 30,000, no, 12,000 BTUs. That's a lot of energy. 80 amp hours. It's just a lot of energy. And if you release that, by having it in the trunk and your 9-iron slips over and contacts the two posts, boy, you can let a lot of energy out of that battery in a real short time. Aside from the fact it's filled with, yeah, like the cartoon, and I don't know, I saw the cartoon. There aren't any magazines anymore, so you don't see it, but there's this is in the 60s, right? You got the freak with the long hair and everything, and he's standing in the garage mechanic has got the hood of his car open, and the freak's saying to the mechanic, "You mean my battery's full of acid?" So anyway, it's people don't deal with batteries much. My wife, we got to get into something else here. My late wife, I still drive the van, a 1998 Toyota Sienna. I don't drive it much, doesn't run very well right now. A 1998 Toyota Sienna, she bought it new and she took it to the dealer every 3 months, every 3,000 miles, I don't know, whatever. Anything they said to do, she did. She just did it and wanted to keep it in great condition. It was successful. I still have it as an emergency vehicle. My daughter climbed into it one time. The daughter I just made rebuilt the MG for at one of our summer parties. This is back, I don't know, 2004 or something or other, and climbed in the car and did something or other and got the lights on and then got back out of the car and the lights stayed on, the battery went dead. And my wife went to leave and it wouldn't start. So I opened the hood of the 1998 Toyota Sienna, and I'm looking at the battery, and there's this great big growth of stuff on top of the battery. She'd been taking it in every regular time that they wanted her to bring it in, and nobody had ever cleaned the battery clamps. Let me tell you, batteries, all the electrics in our cars need regular maintenance. Not every day, not every month, maybe every year. The fuse box has got to get cleaned and the battery's got to get cleaned. You do both those things and it'll work great.
John,
I used to put grease on in fact, I still do put grease on the terminals, cover the top up, and that keeps the growth down quite a bit. The other comment I have is my wife has a Subaru, and if you want to see a lousy battery, see the one Subaru gives you. It probably works fine with a gentleman from Arizona, but she left the lights on, and it was, next morning we got up, it was 0 outside, it was dead. I mean, I put a voltmeter on it, I got zip. I took the battery out, I put a charger on it, I charged it up for about 4 or 5 hours. I took it over to Advanced Auto Parts. I said, I said, I think I need a new one. He said, well, the guy was real nice. He said, let me do a load test. Did a load test. 330 cranking amps, just like it said on the label. So once you can get away with it, I wouldn't do it every week, but once you get away with it.
John, are you familiar with the little lithium battery packs that you can keep in your toolbox when your buddy has left? His lights on. I've had great success with it. I carry it. Haven't had to use it on my car, but I've certainly used it on friends' cars and even on total strangers stranded on the side of the highway. It's good for 10 or 12 starts. And it's amazing because it's only, like you said, about the size of it's smaller than a half pint of milk.
Yeah, with the size, the ones our toolmen came around trying to sell us for the size, I swear, it was the size of a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable how much energy you can pack into it.
And I mean, I've started, Dodge 3/4 ton diesels with it. I don't know if that takes any more than a TD. Probably doesn't take as much as a TD, but they're amazing, and I carry it, and it does the job because as long as I've been carrying it, I haven't needed it. When I didn't have it, I needed it.
That's why I always carry a fan belt and a water pump and a fuel pump. If the car knows it's on board, it won't fail. Yeah.
Can you recharge those, sir?
Yes. Lithium ion.
Recharge easily, and they hold the charge. Mine holds the charge for over a year, and it says it's 100% fully charged.
It's the same stuff that's in your phone.
Yeah.
Lithium ion. So the ones you're not supposed to take on the airplanes. So.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, well, hey, let's take a look at the chat section here, and we'll open it back up. All right, from Judd, XPAG engine, XPAG. That's the X series engine. P stands for push rod. A stands for the displacement, which is 1250, and the G stands for MG. So there were also XPAMs, XPAM for the Morrises, and XPAWs for the Woolsleys. Need to retorque the head. Please remind me, do I back off all the head nuts and then retorque, or do I loosen, retighten each in sequence? Only one at a time. Only one at a time. And those will handle 45, 50 pounds. They don't snap, they stretch, those studs at their original studs.
No, I've got Tom Blank's ARPs on it, and I think I'm supposed to do it up to about either 60 or 70.
Oh my gosh, okay, all right. Yeah, just one at a time, please.
Okay. What does the X stand for?
The X series engine, just like the Midget engine's an A series engine, and the MGA and MGB is the B series engine. And the TA had the MPJG engine. It's just a different way of designating them. So
Okay, thank you. Never knew that.
that's why you're here.
Bingo.
Okay, Tom Weisel, really enjoyed the rolling tech session at the Atlantic City show. Thanks, Tom. Those are always fun. Yeah, where's Tom? Oh, right there. Okay.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice meeting you, and I liked the way you slid under the car so fervently to get the timing marks on the 67. And you said whoever invented the changing it to the 11 o'clock position should get a raise. I concur.
The same guy that put the handles on the batteries, right? Or the straps on gas tank on the filler, gas tank fillers. Yeah, there's just some stuff. Yeah. Or the guy who decided that oil could come in a screw top, a plastic can, instead of those old tin top cans that you had to have the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's been a lot of improvements, but yeah, I really enjoy those rolling tech shows because there's just always a combination of problems, stuff that, it's I looked at somebody's car, something was really wrong with it. Oh, the guy with a bad compressor from Ohio. I wonder if he got home. We thought maybe it was the head gasket had blown, but it was unclear what the problem was. But sometimes you see stuff that's assembled, you go, oh my gosh, where did you drive? How did you get here with a car like that? Which only shows how durable our vehicles are.
And the farther they are from home, the less likely you are to be as a mechanic to want to do anything that might compromise them getting home. Like the lady with the single Stromberg, or was that a Stromberg? Where you shot some ether into the carburetor throat, and it helped to deteriorate.
That was the death knell. It wasn't running well before at all. And when I took that apart, she got. Now, if you've got a Stromberg carburetor, it sounds like a safe sex ad, but carry an extra diaphragm in the glove box, because you can get another 6014 bulb at Walmart. You can find a fan belt. You cannot find a carburetor diaphragm, and without it, you can't go anywhere. Although Cecilia from Scarborough says, well, she says, all you got to do is take a plastic glove and just push it. I mean, temporary repair, just push it out off and put the thing back on and get it aligned correctly and screw the top down and it'll work. And well, yeah, that's cool. It will. I never thought of that. But anyway, Diane Gonzalez, no, Melissa Gonzalez, she's all the way from Chicago.
Right.
In that car. And when I went to, Tom from British Miles brought a couple of diaphragms the next day. I should have had them with me. But so should have she. She probably, when she went to get one, I said, no, get two, put one in the glove box. When I took that apart, imagine a piece of cardboard that was in a leaky attic for the last 60 years, wet and dry, and you get it and it just crumbles.
Yep.
The diaphragm just crumbled. Yeah, that's always the creepy thing, is hurting someone's car. Once when I was at American Side, Niagara Falls, Buffalo, the Buffalo Octagon Association had a mini con back in the heyday of the AMGBA, and I was fixing cars out in the parking lot. This is what, 1982 maybe. And this gal came in and she had all her emission stuff on it and it ran horribly. And I said, I don't dare touch it. She was real offended that I fixed everybody else's car and wouldn't touch hers. But I was so afraid that if I changed one thing, it would cease running. So anyway,
Yeah.
Tom, thanks.
One more follow-up on the battery charger. I have several motorcycles and a couple British cars in my garage. And I found that if you leave a tender on for week after week, month after month, the cells do tend to dry out quicker. Especially notice it on a motorcycle battery because the sides of the battery are translucent and you can see the level. So I went behind my couch and took one of those timers that you put to keep the thieves away. It keeps your lights on for several hours a day, then it turns them off to make it look like you're home. I put one of those out in the garage with a power strip. So all the bikes and cars are on for 2 or 3 hours a day. Perfect.
Okay.
You're not, and you're saving energy too, but you're giving the battery just what it needs because it's sleeping all day long. It's not being used. So 2 or 3 hours I found to be plenty.
That's what Rudy said from Toronto about the difference in the chargers, and there's probably a difference in the quality of them too. The whole idea is that they measure the voltage and go 13.2
Yep.
question mark, and if it's
Yep.
not there, zzz, it charges it. Does it do it 1,000 times a second, or does it do it once?
Yep.
I don't know, but the whole goal is not to overcharge it, and that's what you were experiencing. Because when
Yep.
the cells go dry, that means that it's
Yeah.
overcharging.
So there's a difference between a trickle charger
Oh, yeah.
And a maintainer. Yeah.
and a maintainer, right? A maintainer or a float charger or a smart charger. So any of those three will do what John is saying. It'll measure the voltage of the battery and then zap it whenever it needs a little bit of juice. Whereas a trickle charger will continuously deliver.
It's not
small
considered a
amount of
smart
current to the
charger.
battery.
Gotcha.
No.
Hey, John?
We had a customer who just got done with a midget restoration, almost done, brought it down to us. We did the last little bit. And I said, your battery's scrap. It won't even start. And he goes, well, I'll just, I mean, this thing was all painted in Imron paint back in the day when that was the ultimate of ultimate paints. It was black. It was a beautiful car. And he said, I'll just put a charger on it when I want to drive it. And so it still has, I expect, adult ADD. So he hooked up the charger and wandered away. And when he came back a couple days later, the battery had gone empty, and all that hydrogen gas boiling out of the battery carried with it a little bit of sulfuric acid in every single molecule. And that sulfuric acid deposited all to the rear of his bonnet, and this perfectly beautiful car was perfectly ruined. Now, he owned an insurance company and was self-insured, so we got to fix it again for free, but still, it's just, oh my gosh. So yeah, and when those battery maintenance chargers fail and start delivering 1/10 of an amp all the time, eventually you're going to run your battery dry. So the higher quality battery, What'd you call them, Rui? Not battery tenders, battery floating charge? What was your generic?
So a battery maintainer or a float charger or a smart charger.
Smart charger, yeah, and it's printed in green because it's ecologically.
Well, that's the battery tender. That's your brand.
I'll go for float. Yeah, the float. I like that. That sounds cool. Okay, well, over here on chat, Les Bengtson from Phoenix weighed in with his comments about the newer batteries. So Jim Nybert, hi John, welcome back from Atlantic City. I have a question regarding my 73 Roadster. I had to replace my left rear brake cylinder and the brake connector with the brake fluid pressure sensor earlier this year. I repeatedly successfully bled the brakes with a resulting hard pedal. However, when I drop the car off jacks, the pedal becomes soft. I'm assuming there's air in the lines, but I'm not losing any fluid from the reservoir. Any recommendations besides operator error? No. There's a chance, follow me through on this, when it's jacked up and the rear axle falls, that you're stretching your handbrake cable. So you get them adjusted up and all bled, and then you put it back on the ground and the handbrake is now off. And so you have to push the pedal farther than you did before because the handbrake is not anymore. So the trick is to adjust the rear brakes without the handbrake being loaded. Is that even possible? Jim, are you still on here? Unmute yourself if you're here, Jim.
Most people prefer me to be muted.
Funny.
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, so is there a chance that the handbrake cables is getting stretched?
It's possible the handbrake has lost some of the tension on it. One of the other people, Peter Karuski, sent me a private message saying to make sure that the handbrake's not engaged when I'm doing it. And I definitely have not had brake engaged, so.
But if the cable stretched over the exhaust, that's what happens. The cable gets stretched on the top of the exhaust pipe. So what you can do is take your jack, if you got a trolley jack and it's under the center of the differential, is jack it up so that the handbrake cable is no longer, I mean, don't take it off the stands, just jack it up so it takes the tension off that cable, adjust the rear brakes. So in you've got a hand adjuster or a 1/4 inch square socket or something or other, and you unscrew the adjuster all the way, grease it, run it all the way in until you can't turn it anymore, don't break it off, and then back it off 1/4 turn by 1/4 turn, you can feel, until the drum just runs free. And then when you've done that with both sides, then adjust the handbrake to however high you want the cable to come. I can't believe it's air. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, anything's possible, but I bet it's your handbrake cable. I just bet it is.
Okie doke. That'll give me something to do out in the garage when it gets up to about 95 the next few days.
Where are you calling from?
Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right. I don't know if that hot weather that's way out west is supposed to come this way or not. It's been raining right here in Michigan, just pouring. It's supposed to rain all week. Looks like it's going to rain tonight. So everything's green and lush. Okay, Bill Tantow. Oh my gosh, Bill, you on? I was gifted a pair of spacers made of some composite material about 1/4 inch thick to go between the carburetors and the manifold. Apparently intended to lessen the heat transfer. Any knowledge or experience? So this is on a TF? Bill? Bill, are you still on? Bill Tantow.
TC. TC.
Here we go. Okay, TC. Well, you know, when that air fuel mixture is created inside the carburetor, you know from flying that it's ice cold, ice cold. So I just don't think there's any transfer of heat from the intake manifold into there. So why would you have it there? TFs have it there, MGAs have it there, just a little thick 1/4 inch spacer. MGBs, it's 1.5 inches thick, and that has to do with either spacing or tuning the inlet. Just like the exhaust manifold has a certain shape to it and a certain length of pipe to collect the beats, so that you've always got a suction available at the head when the exhaust valve opens to help pull the not restrict the motion of the exhaust gases.
I thought it would have something to do with avoiding vapor lock.
For the heat to get from the intake manifold to the carburetor body, to the float bowls, I mean, I'm sure that would happen over a period of time, but it would take forever. More likely, the float bowls get hot from the radiation from the exhaust manifold.
Yeah.
And Curto's got those socks. You know, you can buy those little, I'll call them, of course, they're not asbestos, but they're little asbestos socks. Back in the day, we used to buy a sheet asbestos, wrap it around the float ball, take a beer can, put that around the asbestos and the hose clamp around that. But that doesn't look so cool on a restored car anymore.
So I haven't seen you since 2001. Tell me, how many hats have you gone through?
Oh gosh, I haven't counted. I don't know, probably a dozen. At least since then. This one I got 2 right now that I've got holes in the top, you know, from burns and everything. But I take them downstairs and wash them and make them all look pretty again. But after a while, they get too crummy even for the shop. And then I take my dirtiest good hat and make that my work hat and get another hat out of the closet. And then when I get down to about 2 hats left, then I have to look. And you look and to get this hat, you can't, it's not a popular hat. So you just have to find who's making them at the time. Right now, on the inside of this one, it's on the maker's tag, it's British, but the maker's tag on the inside says Failsworth. My granddaughter said, how can any business have a hope of success when their name is Failsworth? That's where I got these last time. They're not Greek fisherman's hats. So.
Thank you.
Hey, Bill, it's a pleasure indeed. So 2001, oh my gosh, that in Minneapolis, huh?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Greg Swartley. Greg has a political comment here. He says, I don't know why I keep hearing MGs are unreliable. My wife and I just returned from a 1,300-mile trip around Pennsylvania in our 1970 Midget, no mechanical problems, only 2 flat tires. Must be wire wheels.
Okay.
Greg?
Yes, wire wheels. I had one had a flat, I replaced the tube, and the other one, the stem actually pulled out of the tube.
Can't hear. Is your volume up? Okay.
So I have a feeling that the tubes, I've only owned this car 2 years. Tubes are probably rather old and I need to replace all 4 of them.
Okay.
So the best place to go to get the tires mounted is a motorcycle shop, because they deal with wire wheels and tubes and tires all day.
Well, the first one I mounted in the parking lot of the motel in the rain, of course.
With those two little tire irons that come in the toolkit, were those still in the toolkit in 1970?
The toolkit's long gone. I wound up, I put a toolkit in there with a brand new tube. I was able to use the jack under the bumper and get the tire off the rim. enough to get the tube out, and put the new tube in, and away we went. We had a wonderful week, and I don't know why anybody would say these cars are unreliable. They are awesome.
John, I learned much to my dismay that there's a difference between the tube for radial tires and the tube for bias ply. I don't know what Greg's got, but if he's not familiar with, I mean, if he's only had the car 2 years, there's no telling what the previous owner might have put in. But I had a horrible trip from Maine to South Carolina because I had radial tubes and bias ply tires. I don't know why that makes a difference, but apparently they'll last about 100 miles and then they blow up. Enough said.
So
They now make tubes that'll do both.
Oh, do they? I didn't
Radial
know
or
that.
bias plied, and that's they're a Firestone brand.
has to do with the thickness of the rubber. That's usually it. There used to be tube type tires and tubeless tires. So tubeless tires still have a ridge on the inside. This just, I don't know, 40 of them around the inside of the circumference, going around. And the tube abrates on them, and finally one of them rubs through. It only needs the tiniest pinhole, and you're off the road a mile later. And then with older wire wheels, of course, the spokes don't remain constant. The spokes start to move just a little bit, just a little tiny bit. And that's why you got that giant rubber band that goes on the inside of the wheel to protect the tube against the spokes. So there's all kinds of, and then of course there's just road debris, nails and stuff like that. You can't get rid of that. We used to, at our summer party, we started doing a reliability run. Phil and Dallas Smith decided that they wanted to have a 1,000-mile run around Lake Michigan. So we went from Grand Rapids, and they decided the best way to do it was you had to come back with a receipt from certain gas stations. That way you could assure that they hadn't got on the ferry and just, short circuited their trip. But that was a 1,000-mile run around Lake Michigan. And I think at the peak, maybe 30 cars participated in that. But it was often called, it was the Lake Michigan Melia. It was the MG Reliability Run, but it was 1,000 miles in 24 hours. And most of the cars, if not all of them, always got back. So you're right, Greg, but that's only if you service the battery and clean the fuse box and change the oil and, keep up on it.
Jim Costa and I ran that thing in his Magnet and won it.
That first time?
No, not the first one. About the third.
Yeah, that was the
third or fourth one, whatever it was.
Oh, no, that was Pesta with the lights on top of the Magnet up against Rhino
that was the one.
MGC. Yeah, so Phil Smith had said first one back wins. I mean, it's a race, right? Well, then it turns out that Pesta and Baumgartner, and I don't know who was riding with Rhinout, but these guys are supposedly doing, well in excess of the speed limit. Rhinout's MGC do 140 on the expressway in the middle of the night in Wisconsin. I don't know how fast that Magnet went, but yeah, those guys came in and they were still velocitized. I remember you guys flew into the parking lot at about 20 miles an hour. It's like, whoa, guys, slow down. So the next year it was the fewest miles. Get back in the fewest miles. The speed, that was the only year I remember that. Oh my gosh.
To get back to the problem with tubes and tires, my friend Manley Ford in his race car would have put a set of new tires on with the tubes, and found out that a lot of the new tires had little tags inside the tire, and in his race car, they would ruin a tube, in about one session. And so he absolutely made sure that they took all those they were just little square pieces of paper. And I'm not sure what they were part of the construction process of the tire. And made sure that every one of those got taken out before they mounted a tire. So you might, if you're gonna put new tires on, make sure that that there aren't those little pieces of paper in there, because they will, after a few miles, they will tear up a tube.
Hey, John,
Guys,
you
there
had
go. There's
mentioned
your
one
two little
time,
tabs that tore up two of my tubes. These are the tabs that are inside the tires.
Pretty cool, Skip. That's real cool. So, all right. So I
John,
guess it makes
Something I learned with the midget on this trip was, one, yes, a week's worth of stuff will fit in the midget, no problem. And number two, a sticker on the tube will flatten the tire. When I pulled that tube out, there was a sticker. You could see where the glue had worked on the tire and put a hole in it.
yeah, John, you had mentioned before about putting baby powder.
Yes, yeah, that's so that the tube, you're taking a tube and putting it in this confined space, and you can get the tube folded around on itself. So what they do when they're doing it, if you're doing it correctly, you go inside there and you get rid of all the crap on the inside of the tire. This takes a while. You got to prep it all yourself and then take it to the motorcycle shop. And
Yeah, that's what I did.
get rid of all the stuff on the inside, and then you go to the motorcycle shop, and if they have it probably because they're doing it all the time, but they put baby powder into talcum powder on the inside of the tire, and then inflate the tube and then deflate it and shake it around and inflate it and deflate it and shake it around, so you don't end up with the tube folded on itself someplace down inside, because anything like that will abrade and very quick. Even, well, as Greg said, even the sticker on the side of the tube.
I took mine to a Harley Davidson shop outside Atlantic City, and they mounted them for me.
Okay. And remember that with wire wheels, the go-to guy is Alan Hendricks in Greensboro, North Carolina. So if you want to invest, I don't know, what, $2,500, I don't know, in a set of wheels and tires, you buy the wheels from him. He'll make sure they're straight, because they come from someplace where they're not all often perfectly straight. And he will mount the tubes and tires, and then he puts it on his machine and spins it, and it's got a razor blade on the outside. And so he skims the tire, which is, nothing's perfect, right? Tires aren't round, supposed to be round, guaranteed to be round, but they're not. So he'll skim that tire and make sure that the outer circumference is concentric with the hub. And it's like riding on, lost my voice. It's like riding on glass, but it's really expensive because you got to ship them to and from, unless you happen to be from Raleigh or Greensboro or someplace close by where you can drive up wherever. Where are you, Judd? You're close to.
I'm in Greenville, about 200 miles from there. The previous owner of my MGB, which is the only car I've got with wire wheels, and I'd be willing to give them to anybody, had Hendricks do the thing, and it is silky smooth. It's the smoothest riding British car I think I've ever been in. Sadly, the tires are now 10 years old. They don't have any wear, but they're 10 years old. And so I'm going to have to go through the whole process again and replace them with tires and see if I can get them trued like you're talking about, because otherwise, having driven it like it is, I won't be satisfied if they're not round. But yeah, he's about 200 miles. I used to live in Greensboro. He's up about 200 miles up I-85 from Greenville.
Well, Pat G is all set to show us his solution to wire wheels, and that is the mini lights that are splined. So Pat's not saying anything, but he's in the window with the ink. It looks like an Inca yellow bee from what I can see. Pat,
Thanks. The yellow gets referred to a different term than that, but I have some wire wheels for sale cheap. But I love those bolt-ons. They're round, and like you say, it's like riding on glass, having round tires and round wheels. Thanks, John.
John,
Hey, thank you.
what about Universal Tire right close to me in Harris or in Hershey, PA?
Yeah, they're the same company, I think, as Coker Tire in Chattanooga, but they just sell the tires, right?
I don't know. That's
I don't
that's
think
my
they're-
question. Do they mount them or do they just sell them?
I don't know. But
Who's that, Coker?
If you're gonna ship them to somebody, doesn't matter if you're shipping them to Texas or Pennsylvania or North Carolina, you got wire wheels and you want them done right, send them down.
I wouldn't ship them. I would just drive there.
Yeah. Hendrix, Alan Hendricks. Okay, Pat G. Yep, here we go. Oh, Pat G. How about a fantastic MGA clutch party outside of San Diego? Must be Pat G. The car you showed us is working, but you got an MGA that needs a clutch.
Just slips a little bit. I can remember customers, I used to have an MG shop, but customers would say that to me and I would say, well, save your money. I'm going to see you real soon. So it's this old 57A I bought a couple of years ago, and it's got a 3-main B. So, but it's time for a clutch.
Yep. I was just driving an MGB today. The guy brought it up to me for a host of other issues, and I drove it home tonight, and it's like I got to call him and tell him it needs a clutch. So when you get a brand new clutch in your car and everything's working correctly, you've got to depress the clutch pedal 2/3, 3/4 of the way down the stroke to get it to throw out, to release. And then over a period of time, usually normal driving, 50,000 miles, that release point for the clutch keeps climbing higher and higher and higher until you just barely have to touch the pedal. And then next time you don't have to touch the pedal at all. It's slipping right at the get-go. So, and that then usually some damage to the flywheel then. So, yeah. No, I'm going to be in Los Angeles, not San Diego, and I don't want to go to a clutch party. I had about 5 guys one time. Somebody wanted to change a clutch, and I said, well, just come on in the shop. And there were 5 guys trying to change a clutch at the same time. It's like, oh, I mean, not 5 different cars, 5 guys in the same car. It's like no more than two mechanics on a car. So,
well, I did it once. There were 4 of us, and I think we had the motor in and out in an hour and a half. But you know, we all knew what we were doing.
No, go back.
and it was a long time ago.
It's a lot easier to do on an MGA anyway.
To do what?
Pull the engine.
Nope.
Compared to what?
I disagree.
Compared to what? Oh my gosh, no.
Well, compared, well, the single bolt on the bottom of the transmission,
Okay.
that is so much simpler than that convoluted bunch of stuff on a B.
I'm leaving the tranny in.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Well, but the saddle mount is such a much better.
The ass.
But,
Yeah.
but I get calls all the time about, I took all my clutch stuff apart, the clutch bracket back there, and there's, what did I do? There's 2, 4, 8. I think there's 8 different variations between the cross member and intermediate piece and the top piece. 8 different combinations, and you got to get it the right way. And of course, you don't pay any attention when you take it apart. So,
Right.
Yeah. But
Allen head screws on the tranny mounts to the tail housing makes it a little easier. Only a little easier.
how did I just learn that now? And I've been doing this for 50 years. That's a really good idea, Tom. Thank you.
I just put Allen head on when I put the transmission back on my TD, and God, it made it easier. It's just 8mm metric screws, fit right in.
Oh my gosh, when we were putting the cross member on my daughter's car, myself and Phil Ryan were underneath the car for, I don't know, at least an hour. I'd say 2. And we both got chubby fingers and could not get, especially on an overdrive, couldn't get the bolt started. Chase the threads, put points on them, all that, we're all set to go. It just could not do it. And Phil, the next day, Phil had other more important stuff to do. And I was back underneath the car and my daughter was up on top doing something. And I'm cursing and cursing and cursing. And she finally says, "Dad, what are you trying to do?" And I said, get these bolts in. And she said, "Well, here, let me do it." I said, you're a girl, and she got underneath there and about 5 minutes later, they're all started because her fingers are just like pencils, little tiny, if she could grab those bolts. But Allen screws, where did I miss that? Oh my gosh.
Not only that, I went up to my local hardware store just outside of Gallonsville, which is in the middle of dark corner nowhere, and they had trays full of them. It was just
8x1 metrics?
Yeah.
Huh.
And they were all grade 8. I mean, I didn't need grade 8, but hell, I bought them anyway.
And ball and Allen wrenches.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we get another note here about what happened to Minneapolis St. Paul in 2001. Well, again, that was the follow-up to Indy 96. That was the next all-register event. That was a nice event up there. So, and then from Bob, I'm struggling with your last name, Bob. With DC. That's not even right. It says, "Hi, John, Canyon." So, all right, from Arnoldo Vargas. John, I have a question. I'm having a persistent problem with my 63B. I have new points, condenser, plugs, rebuilt SU carbs. The idle is very consistent and runs fine. But after a drive, when it warms, after drive, and after it's warm, the idle drops down and sometimes stalls. Any idea what could be the cause? Maybe a bad coil? Well, probably not a bad coil if it's working, if you can run at 60 miles an hour, that's where the coil's stressed. So that's not the problem. I would say, Arnoldo, I see you there.
Yes.
I would say that you're either adjusted a little too lean or a little too rich, and that's why it changes. But there's other stuff going on there too. You got to make sure there's no leaks between the head and the manifold, the heat shield, and spacers and carburetors. You gotta make sure that's okay.
That's all. I put in new seals in all those places, and John Curto did my throttle shaft, and he looked over everything else. So it seems that part is okay.
So I would tell you, timing is almost all carburetor problems are timing, and your timing should be 32 degrees before top dead center at full mechanical advance. Now, if you've got the original 40897 distributor in the car, that's got a 10-degree advance, distributor degrees. That's 20 on the crank. So you could static set it at 12 before and probably come up with really close to 32 degrees if the distributor is really good. But I would do that. I get the timing because when you're going through the tune-up, there are 4 links in the chain and every one is as important as the other. Emissions, you go, I don't have any emissions. It's a 63V. You don't have a Smith's PCV valve on it. Do you have the mushroom-shaped valve on the intake manifold?
It's not on there. That was taken off and parts were blocked off.
Okay, all right. So, because I didn't think that came out until 64 as an 18GA engine.
It's possible.
Is that Smith's PCV valve? But anyway, you got to make sure that stuff's been removed correctly and the inside of the engine isn't pressurizing or nothing's leaking into the intake manifold. Find that with carburetor cleaner. Then you got the engine itself, the valve lash, the compression. I include the spark plugs because they're in the engine, gapped at 35 thousandths. And then you've got the ignition, which is the spark plug wires, the coil points. Your gap should be 15 thousandths, which is a dwell of 60 degrees. Static setting of 12, or with a dial back timing light, because we've joked about those marks on the bottom of the front cover. And they're, you know, you're going for 32 at full mechanical advance, vacuum disconnected. Vacuum disconnected. And then when you're done with all of that, then you adjust the carburetors. And when you're all done adjusting the carburetors, you take a screwdriver and put the screwdriver, a little tiny weeny screwdriver down the throat, turn the screwdriver just enough to disturb the position of the air piston. Just disturb it, just lift it. I mean, the workshop manual says lift it, I don't know, you know, 5/64 of an inch. It's like the engine, how can you do that? So you just disturb it, just move it a bit. And one of three things happens. Either the RPMs go up, up, up because it's too rich. The RPMs instantly fall because it's too lean. What they should do is come along and just rise about 50 and then fall away. Just a barely imperceptible increase in RPM, and then it falls away as you disturb the position of that piston. So,
And a question about that, because when you keep, say I'm using the little button on the side of the SU to do that?
You can, but you haven't got any control on how much you're moving the air piston.
Okay.
I mean, you can do that, you feel it and then you push up on it, but I'm talking about to do it carefully, to do a really careful, put the blade of the screwdriver in and turn the screwdriver, and that lifts the air piston. Okay. And then you can move both of them the same amount. You can listen to it. You can watch what's going on. If you've got a moving coil tack well, I just had to buy one off eBay. My old Fox Valley unit broke in Atlantic City. And it just bought one, but you can see the needle just goes up and comes back down. You can't use digital equipment on our cars. You know, it's like trying to watch a gasoline pump roll, you know, just.
Thank you, John.
So those,
Hey, John.
If you can't get anywhere, call me. You know, call me and we can talk about it. I've got an iPhone and I know how to use it. We can FaceTime, whatever. So.
Hey, John.
Yes.
I mean, your recommendation months ago, when I was having problems, I sent out the distributor. And that made such a big difference, especially if this guy's got an original distributor.
Thank
When
you.
I sent it up to Rob. I got it back, it was like a different car.
Rob Medinsky at British Vacuum Unit in New Hampshire, or Jeff Schlemmer at Advanced Distributor in basically Minneapolis, Minnesota. But Rob gets those back right away. So it is true. It is true that, and over and over I say, you know, that the engine is huge, right? I mean, the engine's a great big massive piece of stuff. It's stupid, and it's got a camshaft in it and an oil pump and pistons. That's it. I mean, it's just, it'll do anything you want it to do if you get the right cam in there. So then you got to get the right distributor. Or, well, go to the carburetors. The carburetors are, you know, you have a suction chamber that's as big as your fist. Then you got a float bowl, which is as big as your fist. And by the time you're done with the body, it's like 3 fists, and you got 2 of those. And then you go to the distributor, and it's only as big as 1 fist, and it's, you know, 1/4 of the whole operation. And the distributor's got to make the spark, time the spark, and distribute the spark all in the same unit, and they wear out. So that is true. So okay.
Yeah, Rob did when I got my distributor back, it looked like jewelry. I swear to God, I never couldn't believe how nice it was. And plus he said it was so out of whack. And he said he gets them out of the box brand new out of whack.
Well, that's the new ones from the same place that sent us the virus. No. Okay, so I don't think it's your bad coil. That's the point. Okay, from Gil Dupre, you came to Chattanooga also. I did come to Chattanooga, but I came to the Chattanooga Choo Choo a long time ago when Oh, blank, come on. Linda, this is his former wife. Oh, gosh, he sounds like, if I can't think of the second guy's name, I'm really in trouble here. Oh, the Civil War author. Oh my gosh, I can't think of either of these guys' names. I'm just blank here. So anyway, yes, I did go to Chattanooga. Those names will boil out in just a minute.
Bryson?
Bryson Leslie, thank you. And who wrote that Civil War trilogy?
Bruce Catton. Bruce Catton.
Not him.
He wrote one.
Shelby Foote.
Shelby Foote and Bryson Leslie could be brothers if they were on the phone. If Shelby Foote was still alive, yep. Shelby Foote was battery commander of B Battery, 50th Field Artillery Battalion, 5th Infantry Division, 3rd Army. And he was court-martialed in Ireland before the invasion and sent home as a private citizen. He screwed with the superiors so much they got sick of him and kicked him out. The reason I know this is because my dad took his place as battery commander. So then Shelby Foote came back to the United States and enlisted in the Marine Corps. And his drill instructor in the Marines, Paris Island or someplace, was said to have said, well, Foote, if you were good enough to be a captain in the US Army, you might be good enough to be a Marine. So, off the subject. All right. So, okay. From Mr. Tatterson, enjoy watching remove a dash from a 63B. You'd enjoy watching me remove a dash from a 63B? It's a whole lot easier than putting it back in.
Hi. I'm doing it right now here. There it is. So two things. First, a quick question. To turn my video off. I don't have a lot of bandwidth. The panel light adjuster knob? The panel light knob?
Which knob? I'm sorry.
The panel, the rheostat for the panel light.
Yes.
How does that knob come off?
If you look on the outer circumference,
There's a locking ring, yeah.
There's a hole there, and you take a dentist tool or a scribe or some sort of small, tiny punch and push in, it pushes a pin out of the way, and the knob just slips off.
Okay, so I assume it's the same with the dash light pull knob as well, right?
Yes.
So there's a little hole in the side. Okay. Thank you.
The 63B does the lighting switch on the 63B is a paddle switch, not a push pull.
Huh, interesting. Yeah, I have a 62 and a 63 and they're both pull knobs, so I guess they're not correct.
Boy, that's hard to believe. No, those are
good. And then just the comment about the comment about reliable cars. I have to say, I have a 62B that I just drove home from New Hampshire to Wisconsin, and it was great. I only had to take the motor out once. But here's the deal. The car, I purchased it in New Hampshire and drove it home, but it had a new clutch and everything, but the bearing in the throwout fork, I discovered was so worn, the throwout bearing was mating up at such a bad angle, it just ate right through the throwout bearing, even though it was new. So just that $10 bushing caused me a lot of pain. So if you're ever in there doing your clutch work, check that little bushing on the arm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was how we always did the bolt and bushing. 11G, blank. Anyway, yes, absolutely. The bolt and bushing are critical to change. And
yes, I learned the hard way.
A lot of the new bolts are like 1/1000th of an inch too small. And so that fork still wobbles. Frustrating. You know, It's not the same as when.
Thanks a lot, John. Appreciate all your
Hey,
insights.
you're from Wisconsin? Patterson, you're from Wisconsin? Your bandwidth just got eaten up, so you gotta turn off your video. So I can still see you, although it's stalled. Well, anyway, he'll come back in a minute. All right, so David Balsley, have you attended the Glenwood Springs, Colorado rally? And what was your assessment of the event? I have not been to the Glenwood. I went to Breckenridge when the Bee Register had their event out there in the summer of 2009. That's the only one I've been to. I'm going to Colorado Springs is when NAMGAR has their event out there. Is that next year or the year after? And I've been to Denver a couple of times on MG business, but I haven't been to the Glenwood Springs rally. So I have no comment about it. But David, get your organizers to invite me as the, I don't know, the featured speaker, the guest of honor or something or other. I'll be there. So let's see, from Tom, ever coming to North Texas or Houston? A lot of MG owners here. I've been to Texas at least 4 times. The Texas T Register. I've been to Waco twice. I've been to Houston once. I was there 2 years ago in October.
You were in Salado a couple of years back.
I was trying to remember that. I was in Salado.
Yeah.
In Houston, and I've been to Waco twice. And I went to Grapevine. My wife and I drove my MGA in 2004, maybe, an MGB event from Michigan to Grapevine, Texas in like friggin' July. It was so,
wow.
It was so hot. Oh my gosh. So, and we got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to leave, and we drove and we drove. I swear we drove for 2 hours, and there was still concrete. There were still apartment complexes and strip malls. Oh my gosh, the heat was so great. So that's 5 times I've been in Texas so far. But hey, I'm keen to come back down just as soon as someone invites me. So now here, Gil Dupre says, I use a Miata battery, 1U, 1 Ulysses, a Miata 1U type. So and Gil, what are you putting this in? MGB or what? Is Gil still on here? We're back. We're down to 107 people. So I don't know if Gil's still on here or not. All right, but anyway, that's another suggestion for a battery for something. So, John Avalone, can you recommend some type of battery strap to pull the battery out of the compartment where it goes into a 73 Roadster? It's a very tight fit. I'll listen to your answer. So cheap, don't buy anything. Just buy a pair of vice, 2 pairs of, you have to buy the vice grips. You've got the vice grips. Just get them a hold, snap, get those clamps really tight, work it out. We used to have at the shop, I assume you can go to Napa, or if Rui's still on, you can go to Canadian Tire and just get a strap with those little things on the end of them, slide them over. They're not polarized. They'll fit on either strap. You used to get those at Napa, I guess. So, but I just use vice grips. Works just fine. Just don't let them touch each other. And you can only feel the electricity if your hands are like really, really sweaty and damp and salty. Then you can feel the tiniest amount of electricity. You can take a 9-volt battery and brush it on your tongue. You can tell if it's good because it tastes so sour. There's a story about that. that Napoleon had attended the French, the French, whatever the Royal Scientific Society was in Paris, and he heard that you could take electricity, and they had, I don't know, 40 or 60 voltaic cells in a great big circle, all one hook to another. So coming out of the end, you had something like 100 volts out the end of this thing, and before anyone could say anything, he put both of them on his tongue, knocked him on the ground, and then he got up and no one said anything, so public embarrassment. Anyway, you won't feel that 12 volts in your hands. If you're wearing gloves, you're not going to feel it at all. Tom, to everybody, can you talk about battery venting? Yes, I already did, only that all of our batteries are vented. Well, there's two types of battery venting. One is that you don't want hydrogen gases going anywhere. I'm going to mute everybody because I got some background noise. You don't want to put the battery in the trunk. That's just a bad place for it.
John, I asked because people are buying these inserts for the battery compartments. The one behind the driver's side, perfect for emergency stuff. But then there's the debate whether to put a battery into one of these plastic inserts. I'm not doing it, but a lot of people are doing it. Is that dangerous?
Well, you're going the chance of hydrogen gas buildup is going to be greater. Usually, to get the cables in and stuff, you got to make some pretty good cuts around those. So there is some ventilation going on, but I'm happier when the battery is open to the elements, open to the atmosphere. I'm happier there. Absolutely.
John, I use a battery box but I have cut ventilation holes in the sides. I thought it'd be safer that way.
That's what I did. I drilled some 1/2-inch holes, sporadic, all around for
Mine
ventilation.
were bigger than that.
Yeah, I put a battery box in there too, and you're gonna have to make ventilation holes when you put the cables in there, but when you're putting the battery box in there and the battery, don't drink any coffee, be very patient, and have a lot of time, because it's really hard to get it in there, but once it's in there, it's a nice little compartment, and I had that flap down lid on it, and it works great.
And you usually, by the time you stuff the battery in there, if you need anything, it's just a little thin piece of plywood someplace. You don't have to tie the battery down. It's already taken care of because of how tightly it's swedged in there. So when I was in Atlantic City, I was given this address about the TD workshop manual, and there are at least 2 pages, maybe 2.5 pages about batteries and how to maintain your battery and how to check the specific gravity, and if the specific gravity is this after charging it, how much more sulfuric acid you should add to bring the gravity up to where it's supposed to be, and how to mix the water and the sulfuric acid, and it's a detailed set of instructions on your battery. And if you go to the owner's handbook in a 2019 Chevrolet Equinox, the only thing it says about the battery is don't drink the electrolyte. The other part of battery venting is how the gases get out of the battery. In the old-fashioned way, you got the caps that you take off, and those just vent out to the atmosphere. The battery itself is vented to the atmosphere. I'm sorry, I get to read it all again because we get some background noise. And then you get these maintenance-free batteries, and they still have to vent to the atmosphere, but they've got these labyrinths that the gases have to take to get out of the battery, and they're so long and so complex that the fluid, any sulfuric acid that wants to come out with the hydrogen, rolls back down into the battery. So the batteries themselves are vented, but of course, what Tom was talking about is venting the batteries themselves. That's a real good idea, putting those holes in the side of those boxes. That's a wonderful solution to it, because those boxes are really handy. First of all, to hold the battery, and then if the battery box is just El Crapo and is just horrid and it's yucky, and you're looking at welding something in there, which you can't. Those battery boxes are really, really handy. So very nice. Hey, Eric Soya, he's from Grand Rapids. So Eric has a couple other cars, and he says, I've gotten a lot of wiring supplies and complete looms for pre-1960 American and some British cars from Rhode Island Wiring also, and I've always been very happy. They're a great resource for supplies, and their website is in the chat section. It's really simple. It's riwire.com, so rhodeislandwire.com. So I'd forgotten about them. They used to, they probably still do, advertise in Hemmings and stuff. You've got a 1938 Packard that you want to just absolutely stunning original wiring loom. Those are the guys. Gil Dupre, I disconnect the generator alternator brown wire and connect the charger to it to charge. Okay. If it's a spade connection, sure, that's a direct route right back down. But then you got two things that are floating: the wire, which is floating, and the clamp, which is floating. So you got to put a rag around it so it doesn't touch anything. When you go to charge like that, rather than get out your, oh, it's raining here now. Rather than getting out your screwdriver and turning those 5 Zeus screws half a turn and then shaking and trying to get that friggin' battery cover off. Oh my gosh, who came up with that? From Tom, battery charger versus battery tender. Battery chargers set at 2 amps, set it at 45 amps. It's gonna charge all the time. Battery tender or floating, battery float charger, those monitor the voltage. They check the voltage and they say 13.2 volts. And if it says, no, we're not at 13.2, it goes zzz and charges it and then checks it again. If it's not 13.2, it goes zzz and charges it again. Checks it again, it's 13.2, it's okay. Check it again, it's 13.2, it's okay. Maybe several seconds, maybe several days later, it's below 13.2 and it starts charging it again. So you can leave it permanently charged. Brad Thurlow says, I run an AGM battery. It only weighs 11 pounds, doesn't have a ton of capacity, but it also recharges to full in an extremely short time. What's an AGM battery? Brad, are you still on, or does anybody know what an AGM battery is?
That's like the Optima batteries. It's I forget the A. Absorb glass mat.
Okay, Pat's weighed in there too. What you got something there, Pat?
Absorbed glass mat. Instead of conventional lead, they use a different material for the plates.
Okay.
We used to call them maintenance-free batteries. AGMs are a good deep cycle battery, but we don't need deep cycle batteries for our cars. That's for motorhomes and RV trailers, where you completely discharge the battery. Problem with AGM is you have to get a special charger or charge them in series with a lead acid battery. Pain in the butt. I don't spend the extra money on an AGM for my MGs. My dune buggy, yes, but it has a much greater chance of being on its side.
Is there a brand battery you like?
Me? Well, there's really only 2 manufacturers. I'm sorry, 3. So around here, the green trucks,
Interstate.
the local Interstate distributor is usually where I buy my batteries. But they used to sponsor my race car, so that's another reason I run their batteries. Around here, people usually buy more battery than they need. You know, the really only the time you really depend on your batteries when you start the car, and you know, we don't have winter, so that's where you need that reserve capacity or cold cranking amps that are important in the wintertime. Like,
I've got to interject here right now. There's a lot of thunder outside. You don't have thunder without lightning. So if suddenly it goes dark, tune in next time. You know, we do occasionally lose our power, and unlike California, it does rain here, and it's raining right now heavily. So
Send it to California.
That all passed through Indianapolis about 2 hours ago.
no, it's a long way. All right, Pat G. If you have to add water, you have a charging problem. Well, during regular, anytime you charge the battery, you're letting hydrogen gas out. So eventually you're going to chew up your electrolyte, aren't you? Anyway, AC Delco says 40% of the batteries they get as cores are good batteries. Well, I believe that because when you go into the battery store, all they want to do is sell you a new battery. So their meter always Sears meters, you can't make them read good. They always read bad. So yeah, if you just take your time, make sure the battery's got distilled water in it. If you have to fill it up and charge it, take 2 days, put it on 2 amps and just charge it up. And if you want to know if the battery's good or not, if you want to check it, and you've got a voltmeter, put it in your car, do something to the engine so it won't start, pull the wire off the coil or something or other, put a voltmeter across the battery and run the starter motor for 20, 30 seconds. And it should never fall below 10 volts. And if it does that, your battery's great. You don't need another battery.
Or just drive it for 150 miles at least once a week.
All right. But you're down south, you can do that. So, this is from George Fox, who says, can you leave a battery charger connected for a long period without any damage? Well, you can, as long as it's not plugged into the wall. But once you plug it into the wall and you leave it on for more than a day, you're looking at trouble. Okay, here we go from iPhone. It says a battery that is called deep cycle can be nearly completely discharged without damage. Correct, that's what deep cycle means. Yep. And from Nuno, we got, now here we got some arguments going on within chat here. It says yes and no. A smart charger on a battery in decent shape is yes. I have 3 C-Tech smart chargers on my motorcycle batteries and 2 Optimate on my 65 Midget and Honda generator. The key is the smart charger. The no part is the high amperage capable charger that isn't smart. So what he's saying here is that charge it slowly, charge it just better. So here we got Henry Lefevre, who says TR8s have the battery in the trunk. No issues in normal usage. So do big Heelys. Speaking of that, so here from iPhone again, we've got take your metal rings. I'm no longer married. I've tried several times. Doesn't seem to work. Take your metal rings off and your watch bands off when you're working on your car. There are those bizarre circumstances where you can short something out, and gold is, about the best conductor you can get. Maybe platinum's better, I don't know, but gold is a wonderful, wonderful conductor. Silver is a good conductor. Aluminum is not. It works fine if it's tight, but aluminum corrodes up real fast. So anyway, just a note of caution. And also, don't work on a running engine with a tie. Speaking of safety. Steve Olson, TR8 batteries were vented to the exterior originally and should be today. Of course, mine isn't, which means no one else's is either. So, Dan Eastman, can you explain the 32-degree setting when timing late MGB engines? Do you adjust the distributor when the engine is running or turn the car off to adjust it? So when you start the car up on let's take a 1972 MGB, the static setting is 4 degrees after top dead center, not before. The static setting is 4 degrees after top dead center. Remember on those old American cars where they had the controller on the for the advance up on the steering wheel, and you put it to 0 or below 0 to start the car so it wouldn't kick back at you? So that's what our distributors do too. And in most distributors are 2 springs. One very weak spring that controls the advance up through about idle, and then the next one from idle all the way up to full advance. The intersection of those 2 lines, they call the distributor curve. There's no curve at all. It's just 2 intersecting lines, but it's called a distributor curve. When you're running at full mechanical advance, the engine's running at 32 degrees before top dead center. The spark comes 32 degrees before the piston reaches the top of its stroke, because it takes a certain amount of time for the gasoline to burn. If I were to take this piece of notebook paper and light it down here, the flame starts real slow and then gets really big and then gets real slow again. Well, this big part of the flame, if you're talking about inside the cylinder, you want that just as the piston's starting to get pushed down. But because it always takes the same amount of time to burn the gasoline inside the cylinder, you've got to start the flame sooner and sooner and sooner, the faster the engine's going. But the mechanical limit, I don't know why, just is 32 degrees. On our cars, not MGA twin cams, 1945 TC through 1980 MGB. Midgets, Cs, MG 1100s, TFs, TDs, MGAs, not twin cam, that's all. All of them are 32 degrees. There's only one distributor that makes the engine run the best, because that's the way it is. There's only one distributor. So in the MGB engine, it's the 40897 distributor. It was used from 62 through 67. Starting in 1968, the federal government required the car to pollute a certain amount at certain conditions. The easiest way to fiddle with that was to fiddle with the distributor, the timing. So Triumphs had 68, 69 TRs had push-pull. They had a vacuum advance and a vacuum retard. That's how they did it. Complex mechanical ways to come up to meet these emission standards. The bottom line on that was that the car polluted correctly, but didn't run as well as it should. So if you want to make your car run correctly, you get that original 40897 distributor or the 41427 distributor in the 45D body, which they used in England right up through 1978, I think, maybe right through the end. And that gives you the best advance, but it starts at 0, around 0. Although we were just talking about setting one MGB distributor static at 12 degrees before. That's as close as you can get to 0. That's the way it's done. But by 1972, because of all the emission stuff, they started at 4 degrees after top dead center. But in any case, no matter which distributor you look at, no matter how it's done, when it's all the way advanced, which is up around 3,000 to 4,000 RPM, it's at 32 degrees. So I don't know if I answered your question. I talked a long time about that, so. Paul, everybody, when installing a 25D 40897 distributor on a 77B, should a metal line with a bulb be used, or will the rubber vacuum do? The rubber vacuum will do. In a previous car, it used rubber hose and the entire unit needs service. So there's a little bulb. It's an I love the British. It's anti this and anti that. So there's a ring inside the speedometer that's painted flat black. That's the anti-dazzle ring. So the question came up in the British Motor Trade Association at one of our annual events. What are the shims for in the 18V engine on the center two pedestals? There's shims. Anybody who's had a late model B engine, a part 72 through 80, knows what I'm talking about. There's two little thin shims underneath the pedestals. And I said, well, my guess is that it is somebody complained that the rocker shaft was shaken. Higher speed, some conditions, it would start to tramp. So by putting these shims underneath the center two pedestals, you bow it, you push the center up, so it's under just a little tiny bit of tension, so it can't tramp. So I said, let's call those shims the anti-tramping shims. Anyway, it's an anti-flame trap. That's what's on that distributor, so that a flame can't get down to the distributor. Well, it didn't anyway. So they quit using them at some point, 67, something like that, 68, and then just went to a rubber hose. It's a whole lot cheaper. You don't need to use that flame trap.
There's one way to not be a bachelor.
Hey, John, you there?
Yes, Barney. Hey, Barney.
Hey.
Barney, first, that's his background. Okay, what's up?
Yeah, I think that's actually a fuel separator trap. The thing is used on MGAs and I think early Bs when they tap the vacuum off the bottom of the carburetor, and you can get fuel that actually flows into that pipe. And so that thing is a fuel separator to keep fuel from getting to the diaphragm of the distributor.
I have read that, but I think I read someplace in some factory literature what was called anti-flame trap. So it's mounted vertically. The bottom of it goes back to the carburetor, and the top of it goes off to the distributor. And the idea here, I got to mute everybody again. Sorry, we got some background noise here. So when the vacuum comes up, it pulls air out of the vacuum advance unit. But when you lose the vacuum, what goes back into the vacuum advance unit? Air doesn't go back in, air fuel does. Pull out the air, push in air fuel, take out the air, push in air fuel. And on that 72 distributor that I was talking to you about before, if you put a test hose on it and suck on it to see if it's good, you can inhale gasoline. I did one time. I got it into my lungs. I started sucking on it, and ever since then, I always shake them first to see if they got gasoline in them. Yeah, so I inhaled this gasoline, and then I coughed, and I had blood. And it's like, this is lung stuff. So I thought, well, we had a number on our phone for the poison center. So I called the number for the poison center, and I said, I've just inhaled, I work on cars, and I just inhaled a little tiny bit of gasoline, and I coughed up some blood, and I just wondered if I should be concerned. And she said, who dialed the phone? And I said, I did. And she goes, no, you got nothing to worry about. So anyway, Barney's right. It's supposed to be it also can be a fuel separator. But if it's a fuel separator, why do they mount it right above the exhaust manifold where it's so friggin' hot? Then the fuel can't condense. So anyway, a rubber hose works just great.
Yeah, on the later model MGBs, the vacuum signal is tapped off either the top of the carburetor or off of the intake manifold, and those don't have a fuel separator on it.
Right. Okay, all right, so anyway, if you have a distributor that has not ever been serviced, it needs to be serviced. Don't buy a new distributor. It comes from the same place that virus came from, and they're not consistent, one distributor to the other, and they've got the wrong advance curves. They can't, it just, get your original distributor rebuilt. Any original part on your car rebuilt is better than anything you can buy new. Now that's a really, really powerful statement to say, and it's not true 100% of the time, of course, but it's true a lot. So Pat G reminds us that MGC has had carburetor cooling fans. They knew right from the get-go that the underbonnet temperature was going to be so high that the car would not restart. They probably found that out during out testing it and so forth. So, Chaz, to everybody, what tools to use to tune an SU carburetor? A TF and a B. Well, there's two different types of MGB carburetors, HS carburetors, which takes the same tools as the TF. And then you got an HIF, which requires one fewer tool than doing the TF for the HS carburetor. So all you need is a screwdriver, a length of hose, and an SU wrench. Oh, and an 1/8 inch, 4BA on the TF. You need a 4BA socket, which fortunately is the same as 1/4 inch, to break those little accordion shaped jobs between the throttles. That's all. Other stuff's handy. Pliers are always handy. Hammers are always handy. Big screwdriver to beat the top of the carburetor to
That's great.
dislodge the dirt from under the needle and seat.
You should be getting a mix of things between the top of the almond.
He says that the Abington spares and Moss tools look different.
What?
I don't know. There's a nice little carburetor kit, a little blue kit that you can buy. So that, like, let's say you got a TD and you got something else you want to do on Saturday besides take the intake, not the air manifold off and put it back on again, which is the preferential way of the preferred way of adjusting the carburetors, because you actually want to listen down the throat with a listening tube down one throat and down the other throat, or put a unison on it and see how much air is flowing through each carburetor. But if you haven't got all day to take that air manifold on and off, or the air cleaners on and off a TF or off an MGA twin cam, some of those things take a long time. Then there's little devices with little wires, and you can make sure that the pistons are lifting at the same rate, and that they're, when it's at idle, that the pistons are straight across from each other and the wires aren't separated, meaning that one piston is riding higher than the other. The height of the piston follows airflow. So if there's more air going through one carburetor, that piston would be riding higher.
Yeah, both sites had the blue kits, but one seemed to have more parts than the other. So I didn't know if one was better than the other, but I may just start with the screwdriver and hammer, like you said, first.
Yeah. Well, the listening tube, I've got a couple videos. I'm sure I do a couple videos up and make it pretty easy. The TF is just a horror trying to get those air cleaners off. So you end up putting the tube, the listening tube, onto the air cleaner on one and then on the other. If you've still got reasonably good hearing, you're listening for the sound, and you just get it as close as you can. That's as good as you can do it. Or you can spend half the day and get the air cleaner off that TF and then use the unison on it and make it really accurate.
Well, so far so good, but I'm sure there'll come a day when I need them.
Okay, so, oh, hey, we're off. We're not talking about carburetors or batteries from George. How much steering wheel play is okay? Is there an easy way to eliminate? I have about 1 inch. George, are you on? Because there's all different types of steering wheel play. We're down to 79 people. That's because we're at 9:18, and I haven't made my second pitch for my, even a second pitch for the PayPal. This has been so much fun. I've been just running with this. Go on my website, look at the top ribbon, find the yellow PayPal button, push the button, thank you very much. And then I can afford to be here next month. I do incur some costs in doing this. I got my constant contact costs and my Zoom costs. Those are real costs, and not a whole lot, a couple $100 a month. So anyway, thank you very kindly for your contributions. George, are you still here?
Yes, I am. I have a 70 MGB. Can you hear me?
Yes. I can hear you, or I was hearing you.
Yeah, I have a 70 MGB.
70 MGB, I got that. And the
Yeah.
steering wheel goes up and down like
No,
that?
no. Side is just turning.
So you can turn the wheel maybe an inch on the circumference before something happens?
Right.
Yeah, that's horrid. The nice thing about rack and pinion is it's absolutely tight. So where could the problems be? The problem, we can start at either end. It could be the steering wheel is loose from the inner steering column. It could be the inner column is loose from the outer column. There's shear pins and it's a Roman D. The tubes stick down inside each other. You can have looseness there. You can have looseness at the steering U-joint. That's pretty easy to find. You put your hand around the steering U-joint and reach way around and grab the steering wheel and move the steering wheel just a little bit through that inch. Can you feel stuff moving? Is the U-joint bad? Are the splines going into the U-joint bad? Are the splines coming out of the U-joint bad? Those are questions. Then you get down to the rack and pinion, because if the pinion is rotating and the wheels aren't moving, that means that the rack and pinion is worn. All you have to do is take it apart, lube it, take some shims out, put it back together. Call me tomorrow, I'll tell you more about it. And then you've got on the end of the tire, on the end of the rack and pinion, you got the inner tie rods. Those can be faulty. There's a big heavy spring inside there. And then the tie rod ends can be faulty. So there's a lot of stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things that I can think of. And it's probably like everything else, mostly one thing, but a bunch of other little things on there too. But rack and pinion is absolutely firm. Should be. You touch the wheel, and the front wheel should turn in the direction that you're turning the wheel. Where are you calling from, George?
Waterford, Connecticut.
Whereabouts?
Waterford, Connecticut.
Waterford, Connecticut. Okay, call me tomorrow on the phone, and I'll talk you through that some more.
Okay.
Hey, John,
Yes.
when I bought my car a couple of years ago, the guy told me when you get gas to put lead substitute in. Okay. He never really told me how much lead substitute to put in. I put like a couple ounces in every time I fill the tank up. Is that the right amount to be putting in?
No, you should be putting in none. It's snake oil.
Really?
Save the money, take your wife out to dinner. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, really. There's no such thing as tetraethyl lead, so you can't put lead into the gasoline anymore. There's no substitute for it. The whole thing started in 1975 when they took the lead out of the gasoline, and everyone said, "Oh my gosh, the conductivity between the exhaust valve and the cylinder head is going to be impacted, and the exhaust valves are going to get too hot and they're going to fail, and you'll have valve rescission, which means sucking a valve, which means the valve moves up into the cylinder head." In fact, that happens extremely rarely. You find it during a valve adjustment when all of a sudden your valve lashes isn't bigger than it should be, it's smaller than it should be. That means the valve is moving up into the head. It's pretty rare. And it all turned out to be a bunch of hooey. So no.
No.
Zinc in the oil, maybe that's snake oil too, but I sure don't think so. And since an engine is, you know, $6,000 on an MGB. If you hire it to be replaced and rebuilt, oh, maybe not 6, maybe just 5, maybe not 5, maybe even 4, then it behooves you to spend a couple extra bucks and buy Valvoline VR1, although someone had another type of oil that was available too.
So the substitute's a bunch of BS.
Yeah, it's advertising. Yep, yep, yep.
John, for oil, Castrol now does a Castrol Classic with zinc in it.
Okay.
And it just came out. You can only get it at Walmart so far. And but I've been using a Castrol, was it 5W50 synthetic because it has zinc in it, and also Mobile One has zinc. But now I find that Castrol Classic, it just came out. 20W50 is all it comes in, and it says Classic right on the bottle. So
It says high
worries-
zinc.
Yeah, high zinc. Worries are over.
Yeah, okay. But that's a real thing. So from Pat G. So we're back in French class, and he suggests that carburetor translated from French means fix me last. Oh, but that's a play on emissions, engine, ignition, carburetors. Fix me last. So, let's see, from iPhone, I got a chance to see you a couple times in Texas. You actually drove my Farina Magnet in Salado and convinced me that adding oil was cheaper than an engine rebuild. So many years later, and it's still running great. Okay, but you can. I mean, if you're blowing 2 quarts a tank full, 3 quarts a tank full, you know, you're spitting oil on the guy behind you in line, and you have the terrible danger of forgetting, pushing it one day and running out of oil, and that's no good. But if you're only running less than a quart a tank, just add it, carry it, add it. It's only a couple bucks versus, oh my gosh. Anyway, a question also is, I'm working on a friend's 1980 MGB and added some headlight relays. Now our lights don't work. No good deed goes unpunished. When I wiggle the turn signal stalk, the lights flicker. I'm thinking a bad turn signal switch, maybe, but approaching any electrical malfunction without a wiring diagram for your car and a 12-volt test light, throw away that meter, a cheap-ass 12-volt test light, without the wiring diagram and without the test light, it's a certain route to madness. So if you don't have a wiring diagram for your car, email me, I'll send it to you. It's a pretty high definition. You can take it to a FedEx office and get it blown up into a poster so you can see what's going on, and then you can take your test light and go connection to connection to connection and find out where the fault lies before you buy a new switch made in the same country that sent us the virus. Or, you know, I mean, I talk to people all the time, and they bought $300 worth of stuff. And I had a guy come around last week, and he's had this electrical problem that's plagued him for 2 years. And he's got to the point where he drives around with a voltometer on the passenger seat, and he glances at it all the time rather than looking down the road to see what the charging voltage is. And the battery voltage is often sitting at 12 or 11 and a half. Then sometimes it'll spike up to 14, and then it's back down to 10. It's all over the place. And he says, I've done everything. He says, I cleaned every ground on the car. I did this, I did that, you know, and everything. I said, well, let's just go through it. He brought it down the shop. I was working, and I just kept telling him what to do. I said, take the battery out of the car. Take it out of the car. Clean the, I just did that. I said, dude, you're here. You know, you want me to help you? Do what I say. So take the battery out of the car, clean the post, expand the post. One of the clamps was bad. It already tightened up all the way. He couldn't get it tightened up. I gave him another clamp to use. And then go to the bottom of the starter motor, take those wires off the bottom of the starter motor. And this is a 75B or something. And And then we get up and we take the alternator plug off the back of the alternator, take the plug apart and crimp the spade terminals in there, put the plug all back together. Then we took the alternator off the car. He says, I've taken the alternator into the shop 4 times. Every time they check it, they say it's okay. And I said, well, you know, hey, let's go for gold here. And we took the back of the alternator off. I said, let's look at the brushes. And we looked at those. And then we looked at the connections. And there was a loose connection. It was apparently on the alternator machine. The connection was always there when the guy tested it, but going down the road when the thing's shaking, it was making a breaking connection and sometimes charging and sometimes not. So we went from the battery all the way back up to the alternator. So you go step by step, connection to connection. That's why you need the 12-volt test light, and that's why you need the diagram. So, from iPhone, who drives the Farina Magnet in Texas, email me, call me, and I will send you the wiring diagram for your car. So, oh, from Chaz, everybody, he says, I assume that now, not having read the other stuff, I assume that 2 inches of slop in my TF steering wheel is too much. Oh yeah. So in a TF, you've got that clover leaf. It's a clover leaf right down there by the oil pump. And those,
Yeah, that's tight. I think I've narrowed it down to a bad pinion or a bad rack. Everything else is tight.
okay, but remember that the pinion turns and the rack sits on top of it, slides across it, and there's a damper that pushes the rack
The
against.
spring was broken in the damper and I replaced it and that didn't change anything.
Well, how about all the shims in there? You take
The
some.
shims were good.
No, well, the shims are good, but how many are there? There's too many. If you
Well, I took them all out and tightened it as tight as I could and it didn't change a thing.
okay, so cheat and put a shim behind the spring.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you got to get something down onto it. You got to push it down. I mean, in the past, we'd rebuild a rack and pinion for a T-type or an MGA. They're virtually the same thing. And get the inner tie rods apart, and then we take the rack and we took it to the machine shop because for the last, how old is that TF? 54?
Well, it's a 53, but its title is a 54.
Okay, so that's, how many years old is that? 70? Sounds like it, about.
Close enough.
It's just under 70.
Can't do that math in my head, but I just remembered when I was born, so that's why I came up with the 70. So the top of the rack where that spring sits, right there is worn badly because it's run out of oil 18 times in the past 70 years, and people haven't attended to it properly. So you if you tighten it up so that it's great going straight down the road, you go to turn full left or full right lock, and it'll bind up. You cannot ever have your steering bind up. That's just super dangerous.
Yeah, when I went full left, full right, I still had the play. That's why I'm thinking the gears are worn.
Maybe. I mean, I'm okay. You can buy a new rack. You can buy a used rack. There are people out there. Look on eBay. There's people to call. Call me tomorrow. I'll give you some names. Although I can't think of any right off the top of my head right now, but by tomorrow I'll be able to come up with
Well, I'll
some.
try that cheater idea you had, and if that doesn't fix it, I'll probably just replace the rack and pinion.
It'd be very unusual,
Yeah.
but you're going to have to do what you're going to have to do. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You got to have it so that just a nudge of the wheel turns the front wheels. From Pat G. What about batteries on concrete floors? Is that an old wives' tale? So the old wives' tale is that if you put a storage battery, a lead acid battery on a concrete floor, the concrete floor will suck the electricity out of the battery. Come on, it's a plastic case. Concrete doesn't suck anything. But it's true. But it's true. So where does it, you put a storage battery on a concrete floor up in Michigan for part of the winter, you go out, it's dead.
Oh, it'll freeze. Yeah. It'll freeze in Michigan. I think, John, the wives' tale originated from back when storage batteries had wooden cases and they would tar the wood. So, wood would absorb the sulfuric acid and it would discharge to a concrete floor. But modern batteries, I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either, but I'll tell you, here in Michigan, you put a battery in a corner and go back a couple of months later, the charge is gone someplace. I don't know,
If the battery does run down and go dead, then it will freeze and split the thing open.
Yeah, a fully charged battery with 1250, 1275 specific gravity won't freeze. So. Don Bueller, I removed the body of my 52 TD for painting. This was done many years ago, and I recall there was a ground strap that was connected from the body to the transmission. The ground strap was cut to remove the body because of rust. The strap was never replaced upon reassembly. The car runs well. All the electrical components work. What are the implications of not having a ground strap for my electrical system? Now, Abington Spares, he goes on and says, sells a 10-inch ground strap. You can buy one at Napa too. To go from the transmission to the frame. Where does it connect? So the only reason that you need that ground strap from the engine to the chassis is for starting. It's not the only reason, but that's the main reason, because you're running 150, 175 amps in a circuit that's got to be grounded. So how is this thing grounding now? Oh, through the pivot on the clutch, back to the clutch pedal. It's going through the starter cable. It's going through the choke cable. It's going anywhere it can during the start sequence. So you want to get a cable on there, absolutely. You'll fry your throttle cable. If you've got a temperature gauge, mechanical temperature gauge with that wire wound capillary tube, on some cars, I've seen it. You're pulling the starter motor and the temp gauge goes right up, because that little windy wire gets hot because that electricity is taking any path it can to get back to ground. So the proper place on the TD is on a bolt that holds the gearbox to the engine, just above center. Doesn't go into the aluminum sump. It goes into the engine. And then it goes to one of those triangular boxes, one of the two bolts on the triangular box on the left-hand side of the car, which has all been impossible to reach. So the cheap trick is just run the cheap trick, not Mr. Original here, is to run the cable right from the battery right down to the back of the engine. And you've got those 4 screws on the back of the cylinder head that hold that plate on. That's a good place for it. Anything, just right from the ground side of the battery right to the engine, but properly. It's on the left-hand side of the engine, just above the sump, and then over to one of the 2 bolts, the 5/16 British bolts that hold the triangular box frame that holds the floor, the toe board.
John, if I do the cheap method, would I then, I have positive ground, so I would just run it right from the battery to the engine.
From ground to the engine. And then because I use 2 straps, or use a much lighter strap to go to the body, just to make sure that everything on the body is grounded too. Okay. I mean, it's working now, but I would use 2 grounds. I'd take one a big one to the right from the battery, from your positive post on the battery to the back of the engine, something on the engine, then not the external oil line that runs to the cylinder head. The ground strap attached to that once. And then use a much lighter gauge one just to ground to the body right where it is now, or combine the two.
Yeah, the easiest thing would be, I mean, on the T-type, the ground from the battery goes right to the side sheet metal. And if you just tied another cable to that cable and into the back of the block, you'd be solid.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any trouble putting the transmission to body cable when I put the motor back in mine. So I don't, anyway, you said it.
It wasn't hard. Gloria and I worked on a 52 Mark II, hadn't run for 33 years. So of course we had to put new exhaust, total interior, because something was living in there, and got the generator working, did all the stuff, and went to start it, and it wouldn't start. And I grabbed the linkage, and it was hot. And I said, we don't have a ground. And I could tell a lot of the wires we had to replace were burnt. So we took a crowbar and stuck it in there for a temporary ground. And it started immediately. After 33 years, that car just started and ran great. So Gloria crawled under there and put the ground back where it belonged. They just ran it to the wrong place. And the car sat for 33 years because of a ground strap.
I needed Gloria to climb under my car.
Next section, Bob and Gloria will have their phone number, and they take house calls.
I can rent Gloria out.
Guys are funny.
Okay, here's one. We're at 9:40, so I'll take about another one or two of these, and then that's it. Can you please explain what vapor lock is? So when gasoline gets too hot, it boils, and when it boils, you can't suck it into a fuel pump. So vapor lock occurs between the fuel tank and the fuel pump. That's where vapor lock occurs. That's what vapor lock is. And the pump's working, but it can't move fumes. It has to move liquid. Therefore, you starve for gasoline. This is especially a problem with midget 1500s, because their fuel line not only runs all the way up to the side of the engine where there's a mechanical fuel pump, but it runs on top of the transmission. And in August, in Michigan at least, in an asphalt parking lot, boy, it can get pretty hot, and you can boil the fuel and it'll quit working. There's another sort of side to that, and that is if the gasoline in the float bowls begins to boil, then the car won't start. Could you call that vapor lock? I mean, maybe you could. Technically, it's not, but sure, call it that. And that is, and the only solution to that is to let the engine cool down, let the carbs cool down so that you can get the engine started. If you're handy, you can open up the bonnet. You can lift the air pistons by angling the dampers on the top, lift them off the side, and lift the air pistons up, and then the guy inside the car can get it started. Once it starts to run, some fresh fuel comes in there, the air is blowing on the carburetors, they cool down right away. But anyway, that's what vapor lock is.
Tell them to pull the choke out and give us some more gas. It'll start.
You know, I've tried that, but what I was just explaining was leaning it out, you know, lifting those air pistons. So
No, what happens is the fuel starts to boil in the float chamber or where the float chamber enters the bottom of the carburetor. And you get bubbles that going through the main jet that makes it run extremely lean, and it just stutters and dies and doesn't want to crank start. But if you pull the choke full out and hit the gas pedal, it'll start, and it'll run on about half choke until you run it long enough to get some fresh fuel going through there, cool off the fuel that's in the float chambers.
This
Yeah, John.
Especially
John?
a problem with, yeah, just like, this is especially a problem with MGAs.
This is why I have a little blower that blows fresh air on my carburetors. Gasoline boils at 190 degrees Fahrenheit. Alcohol boils at 160 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you got fuel with 10% alcohol in it, it's a mixture. It's not a chemical compound. So the fuel will then boil at 160 degrees Fahrenheit because the alcohol boils first.
Yeah, John?
Yes, Steve.
Yes, I'm the one who asked about the vapor lock. I have a 1980 MG that has the AUD 135s on it. I know it didn't come that way, but that's what's on it. And when I'm idling at a stoplight for a few minutes and I step on the gas to go, it seems like there's no fuel there. And that's why I was thinking not so much vapor lock, but the fuel boils out of the fuel bowl. Now, even though the pump is running, I can't understand why the pump wouldn't replace that fuel fast enough. Or if I shut the car off and go in the store and come back out a few minutes later, I have the same thing. It'll start right up. But if I go to pull out, it's just like I took my foot off the gas. It just won't go until I let it idle for a little bit. And then it seems to fill the fuel bowls back up, and then it works great. It's extremely hot here. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's what you think is happening, but.
That's what I think, yeah, I don't know.
So on a downdraft Weber, 36 DGV, that's a real common, you see it real commonly on MGs now, even on MGAs. Why would someone take off those beautiful carburetors and put on a downdraft Weber? But anyway, they do. You get what's called the Weber stall. And you're sitting at the stoplight, whatever, you go to take off, you put your foot down and it's just blah, it goes nowhere. And then within 2 seconds, it takes right off again. And that's caused by the gasoline falling out of suspension. And as soon as you open up the throttles, the air sucks all this extra fuel into the engine. There's too much fuel in the engine and it won't fire until you run all that thick, all that real extra gassy air fuel mixture out of the engine. So do you have your carburetors adjusted too rich? I've never heard this problem with dual HS carburetors on a late model B. This is real unusual. So you can, if you want to call me tomorrow, I'm intrigued with your problem. I'd like to get to the bottom of it. Not just for you, but for me, because somebody else will have the same problem. And as Barney says, this modern fuel boils at a much lower temperature. Glenn Lenhard called me up one day. He had an MGC that he was test driving, and this thing would just kill at a stop sign. I mean, you didn't have to turn it off. It turned itself off, and then you couldn't get it restarted. He was just going nuts. It turns out in Florida at that time of year that there was no alcohol in the high test gasoline. So if you only ran the 92 gasoline, you didn't have that problem. Coming up with a solution sometimes is difficult, but there is a solution to your problem. So, but it isn't because the carburetors go empty. It's not.
Oh, it isn't, okay.
It's not.
I didn't really know what it was. I rebuilt the carburetors. I bought the tool to adjust them. I mean, it runs really good, even though it's, like I say, it's really hot here and I can drive it. I had it out Saturday all over the place, and this afternoon, everything is fine. It's just when it sits for a little bit, not running after it's hot, or I'm idling. It's the only time it has that problem. And then it's just for a few minutes.
Where are you?
I'm just north of Philadelphia in a thriving metropolis of Macungie, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, sure. I've been there.
You've been there. You blink and went right through it, huh?
Doesn't it say welcome to Macungie on both sides of the sign?
Yeah, it's the one, yeah.
You can always pull out your phone and download the app puregas.org and find a gasoline station that has no alcohol. Now, if it's 40 miles away, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense, but If you can find non-ethanol gasoline, I think it's pure-gas.org, I think. I don't have it on my phone. I've never looked for it.
Hey, John,
Yeah,
I live near, not too far from Akanji, maybe a half hour south. And I go up to the ABE airport on Route 22, and there's a Sunoco gas station that sells the real gas, it's called, without ethanol.
okay,
I go up twice a year and fill up my 5-gallon containers. So,
okay. Well, Steve, there is a solution, Steve. It's probably easier than turning your garage into a bomb with 5-gallon cans of gas, but there's some way out of this. And that non-ethanol gasoline is certainly one, if it's not too far for you to drive. And maybe
No, that's not that far.
maybe it's just an adjustment, but I'll need, now when I talk to you, I'll ask you for pictures underneath the bonnet and see how you get stuff hooked up, and we'll get to the bottom of it.
All right, thank you.
I put the little $20 bilge blower on my MGA. It just blows fresh air on the carburetors. Fixed it right up, no problem.
Well, that's Barney's saying that you can get a bilge blower, it must be 12 volt for what, boats? Is that what it's for?
Yeah, it's for boats have inboard engines, and they have to blow air through the engine box. And it's a little thing. They come in 3-inch diameter or 4-inch diameter, and the 4-inch one can go in the air hose. But if you get the 3-inch one, it can go right inside of the pipe, right in front of the carburetor. And they're like 20 bucks. It's called Atwood Turbo 3000 bilge blower.
Yeah, I've seen something similar to that where people had jury rigged up some kind of fans, cooling fans from a computer and stuff like that on there to cool the carburetors. And I guess that works. I don't really know, but.
This one blows about 250 cubic feet per minute. It's a 30-mile-an-hour wind coming out of this little blower.
Okay.
Most people don't have to do that, so there's probably an easier solution, but
That's what I'm thinking. There's a fix for this other than the fan.
You normally don't need it when you're driving down the road, but when you feel like you got a hot engine, you just came off the expressway, you pull into a gas station, shut it off, fill up the gas. 5 minutes later, it doesn't want to restart. Or if you get stuck in stop and go traffic on the expressway, road blockages and things, and you're creeping along at 1 mile an hour with your engine idling on a hot day, it'll do it.
Right,
John,
right.
We had the
Okay.
same trouble on our trip around Pennsylvania the other week. It was 90 degrees. We were going through a town, stop and start traffic, and we got moving. The engine spit and sputtered till it cooled down a little bit, half a mile down the road, and then it ran great. I just put it up to ethanol in the gas, and when I got home, I started refilling with non-ethanol and haven't had the problem since.
Okay, all right. But hey, it's 9:51. I'm 51 minutes over my set time. There's still stuff on here. Pat G says he saw a car with bad U-joints because it was grounding it was grounding through the U-joints. You know, when you don't have a ground strap on the engine, the electricity takes any path it can. Brake lines and as Bob and Gloria said, through the carburetor linkage and
John?
yes.
Hi, it's Walter.
Walter.
Just back to the gentleman with the Weber problem. I work with Chevrolet V8s occasionally, and because I own a couple. And here in Southern California, it gets very hot, and on a very, very hot day, I can actually see the carburetor boiling, and the excess fuel is pushed into the manifold. So I have exactly the same problem he has, but there's nothing to be done with it because of the lower boiling point with the alcohol in the fuel. It's just pretty typical. The fuel in the carburetor boils over into the intake until you've run the car a few minutes and clear that out. It's going to affect the way the car runs.
Yeah, we all have varying degrees of the same problem. So, but this is good one here from user. Someone here uses. John, it says, you just mentioned the starter pulling 150 amps. Why is the relay only rated for 50? So who's user? Are you still on? We're only down to 56 people. We're all crazy here, sitting around. Yeah, barely. Where are you?
Oh, John, it's Gary Greenspoon.
Oh, Gary, all right. Okay, so what year are we dealing with here?
1980. Roadster.
Okay, well, the solenoid on the starter motor is the relay that runs the power from the battery to the starter motor, and that's rated for a lot more than 50 amps. So,
But there is a starter relay as well.
There is, but that only operates the solenoid.
Gotcha. Say no more.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Percolating vapor lock, lots and lots of comments from lots and lots of comments about the vapor lock. So anyway, I'm down to the end of chat because I skipped over some. I want to thank everybody for being here. Again, our next meeting is next Zoom, July 12th, and that's at 8 o'clock. And what we're going to do there, I've got a friend here in town, Art Lewis, who's collected car badges. This is not technical, it's just fun. And Art's got, I don't know how many, 200-300 badges on these huge octagonal boards. And we can't look at all of them or anything. And I can't even set this thing up to work right, but with my computer and him and a camera. So we're going to take a short video, 10 minutes or so, of him talking about 10 or a dozen of his favorite badges. And then he can come here and we'll play. I'll figure out, talk to my daughter, or Simon Dix will help me with something. And I'll figure out how to play that on my computer so you can see it. And then after he gets done, he'll be here and we can talk about the badges and different car badges. And he's always looking for more car badges. So we got that coming up. So I wish everybody safe driving. The three most important parts of your car: the brakes, the steering, not this, brakes, steering, and brake lights. Whether it runs or not comes along after those three things. So thanks very much, everyone, for being on board. Barney, thanks for weighing in here. And Bob and Gloria, it's always nice to see you guys. And thanks for, oh my gosh, everybody's on. We've been on here for can't be. It's been 3 hours. Seems like just a moment.
Yeah, we've only been on for 2.
Oh, because you thought I was starting at 8, like I said last time or something. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can unmute yourself and we'll sit here for a minute and listen to the word is cacophony of all the voices.
Well, you know, you're talking about the vapor lock. I don't have that problem, but occasionally my car, it idles about 1,000 RPM. It's nice, it's good, it starts all the time, it runs great. Every so often I come up to a light, it'll drop down to about 500 RPM. And I just blip the throttle a few times and it generally is okay. I didn't know if it's running too rich or
HS or HIF?
HIF.
Yeah, you won't find that with HS. I don't, that those have got temperature compensated jets. So the mixture changes depending on the temperature of the carburetors.
Okay. It's not a big deal because it just goes away with a blip of the throttle.
I got bumpers for sale if anybody needs any.
What kind of bumpers?
You mentioned about calling you, John. What's the phone number to call?
616.
Right.
307.
Okay.
6737.
Okay, thank you.
But if it's anything that might be related to anything that an MGA might have a problem with, we share the same engine for years. We share the same gearbox, so forth. Look on Barney Gaylord's site, mgaguru.com. Barney's got, what, 4,000 pages up, Barney, around there?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, it was 4,000, still growing.
So anyway, he's got a lot of information there, just about stuff, just stuff. And it isn't just MGA, and a lot of the stuff transfers back and forth. But I'll work with you if you want to FaceTime me. Call me first, and we can set up a time, and I can FaceTime, or we can work on the internet or whatever. If you need a wiring diagram, I can send you one of those. You can buy the test light yourself, stuff like that. So.
No
Bumpers are from my background TD.
What's that?
The bumpers for sale are from my background TD.
Oh, okay.
Went up and smoked 2 days ago.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's on fire.
Bad short out in the middle of, on a big run.
Oh my gosh, and those are the flames of the car right there, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go, I do not want to see this, but keep talking. Oh my God, oh, how horrible is that?
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's another reason you should always have a fire extinguisher on board. Although
Right.
sometimes electrical fires, they're just, the short just keeps happening. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Oh, how sad is that? Total loss?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Some car shows you have to have a fire extinguisher in order to, but they say that, but they never checked.
Well, it's a good suggestion, obviously.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm still trying to mentally recover, but
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that is.
How long do you have the car?
since 04.
Wow.
Oh my.
Yeah, I did everything except a paint job. And now it won't buff out. So
Oh my gosh.
all I can do is laugh about it right now.
So sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Thank you.
First of all, you got to have your humor. You got to be able to laugh at yourself and your situation, although, geez.
Yeah.
Jeez.
John, I'm told the ethanol that is being used in the gasoline right now eats up the rubber fuel lines, and that some of the older cars have been having a lot of problems with the fuel lines leaking and then catching fire and stuff like that. There is a fuel line made specifically for ethanol gasolines. I don't know if everybody has it, but here on the East Coast, they put ethanol in here. And that's one thing I'm going to be looking at real close, is see what kind of rubber lines I have on mine and get the correct fuel lines for it. So I don't have.
Go-to place is Napa. They seem to have a good selection of stuff. And they sell a Gates hose, Gates, Gates, a Gates green hose. There's a little green line on it so that it's eco-friendly, right? But they rate hoses and how much fuel evaporate out of the hose. So they'll take like a foot-long piece of hose, fill it with gasoline, and over a year, how much of that gasoline evaporates?
Wow.
And out of one hose, it's like 4 tablespoons, and out of the other hose, it's none. So
Right.
New Gates hose is good stuff.
From Napa.
Napa, yeah. Well, I mean, it's Gates, so I mean, that's not an in-house brand, so.
It's,
Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you.
it is,
And,
we were somebody was talking about unreliable British cars. In 490,000 plus miles, I had the car towed 3 times. Once was my own fault because I didn't change a U-joint when I knew it was going. And the other 2 times I blew piston rings, and I found out my cylinder walls were tenting. Took care of that, but I wouldn't be afraid to drive my car now to California. I drove to Alaska and back. I mean, they are not unreliable. Especially when that car that sat for 33 years started right up. That just impressed the heck out of me.
Especially when you use the crowbar for
Oh, yeah, for the ground. It's hard to run alongside and hold that crowbar.
I love that stuff. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I see your BMC service So I did tip this thing down so you could see my University Motors patch here.
Yeah. I don't know where I got this shirt, but
Hey,
I like it.
well, if you got an MG, you've certainly earned it. So,
Yeah.
okay, well, hey, everyone's here. It's very, very kind. Ron Nugent, I see you on there. I'm gonna be out there pretty soon. So, yeah.
Oh, hi, John. Yeah, I'm down around the Eagle Rock area this evening.
Yep. Okay, my daughter's in Denver today, but she'll be back in Eagle Rock soon. So,
Well, as soon as this is over, I'm jumping in my car and tearing all the way up about 300 miles north of here. So I've been waiting for this to be over so I can.
it's only 5 o'clock there, right? I mean,
No, it's just after 7 o'clock here.
okay. All right. Well, gentlemen, ladies, thank you very, very kindly for being on. We still got 30 people here after. We're on to this for 3 hours tonight. This is crazy.
But it's so interesting. MG owners are interesting, if not, they're eccentric.
It's a nice group of people. You know,
Three's a lucky number.
Yeah, it's just I got my license plate, and for my MGA, or you can't see it, but it says 62 MGA. I was going to get deluxe. It's still the wrapper. I was going to get deluxe, but what does that mean to anybody?
Yeah.
What I wanted was UMG 251. Speaking of lucky numbers, but that's the same alphanumeric combination as they use on the plates right now, so you can't get it. Anyway, we could keep talking forever, but we'll take a hiatus until our next Zoom session. Anybody wants to call me anytime? Probably not tonight, it's 10 o'clock, but maybe tomorrow. You know, I'll be working all day tomorrow, tuning up an MGA and doing some other stuff, and then pretty soon I'll be in California and I'll be able to tune up Ron's car. So, all right.
Thank you, John. Always a pleasure.
Ladies, nice evening. Thanks very much for hanging in.
What time next time? 8 o'clock or
8
7?
o'clock Eastern, yes, so that Ron he'll be dinner time by the time he's set to go. So, yeah, all right. Thank you very kindly.
Good night.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Good night.